Welcome to the Simply Well podcast. I'm your host, Sadie Jane, and this is a special episode because I finally get to introduce my beloved husband and partner, Jeff Sabin. Welcome to Simply Wild, Jeff.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to finally be on here.
Yeah, we're in our Hawaii mood and we're here for the rest of the year. My dad actually owns a cattle ranch over here, so we spend a lot of time over here. And it actually feels so perfect that you're coming on here because we renewed our vows here. In a lot of ways, this place, this sacred space, really saved our marriage in so many ways. And I'm just so excited to have you finally on. And of course, you're here with a tank top and your hat, but man, gorgeous.
Tank top Jeff is here.
Yeah, we joke that when Jeff puts a tank top on, it's different. He's like a different human. It's like his party play side comes out. So, okay, Jeff. So here we go. There were so many episodes at the beginning where I was like, I can't wait for Jeff to come on. I can't wait for Jeff to tell his story. And we're going to have probably a handful of episodes, together. But this one, I specifically just want it to be you introducing yourself. Like, who are you? Who are you to me, to SSJ? How did you get to who you are and where you're going and all those things? So why don't you just start introducing yourself and just like tune in and start at the very beginning, wherever you want to start.
Okay, sounds great. So I grew up in a family of 6, grew up on a farm in the middle of Washington State in a teeny tiny little town of 3,000 people. I was very shy, very quiet, never dated, just terrified of girls. Only had like 1 or 2 friends. So childhood was amazing. I loved nothing more than being on the farm, working with my dad. I was obsessed with it. That's all I ever wanted to do as a kid was I just wanted to grow up to be a farmer. So grew up, played sports, very active. I was really heavy and very self-conscious about my weight. By the time I graduated high school, I was like 280 pounds. I was big. And even through high school, I was always fluffy, always chubby. I remember once I hit like puberty, like 11 or 12, grew a belly and never liked it. Never liked my body, never liked my self-image. Got really shy with that. And so I just hid away from the girls just because I'm like, no girl will like me. Nobody will want to be my girlfriend. And so I just hid. And I also hid in food. I loved food. I loved to eat. My mom cooked amazing meals and treats and snacks. And again, we lived in the middle of nowhere. And so she would just cook and cook and cook. And it was delicious to me. I loved it. And I would just...
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was comfortable. It was like something that I could control, something that was like my safe space. So went on a 2-year mission. That taught me a lot. That really taught me a lot. That broke me out of my shell, made it to where I was able to be more talkative and outgoing, and really just helped me in so many ways.
That was your first time that you really traveled, right?
Yeah, that was basically the first time that I had ever been away from home. I was, for lack of a better word, I was really attached to my mom's apron strings, where I had the gold spoon, I had the apron strings. Like, I was terrified of leaving home. I just wanted to be at home. And so going on my mission really broke that out of me and really helped me a lot. Really taught me so many different things. And towards the end, I was like coming up on a year halfway through, and I'm like, I'm even heavier. I got up to like 300 pounds. I had filled out my shirts, filled out my suits. And they were big already. They were massive. I was wearing like a size 42 jean. I was wearing like a size 18 neck white shirt. Those are massive, massive clothes. And so I'm like, man, if I'm going to go home and find a wife and all these things, like I got to lose weight. I got to dial this in. And so,
were you interested in girls like growing up, or was it just like not something that you would even think about?
Oh yeah, I was so interested in girls. There were some girls that I was obsessed with, but I was like, there's the one movie, what's that?
Just Friends
Just
with Ryan
Friends.
Reynolds.
Yes, the movie Just Friends. That is me to a T. I was that chubby kid in high school. I was best friends with like the cute girls. And there was like these cute girls in our school where they always had like the hot boyfriends or that type of thing. And I was best friends with her basically.
You were always in the friend zone.
I was always in the friend zone. And so then on towards the end of my mission, I'm like, I got to dial this in. And so I basically, towards the end, I lost about 50 or 60, I think it was like 50 pounds. By the time I got home, I had lost 50 pounds and I had transformed and I loved it. I was obsessed with just how much I had changed. Like, I had also kind of grown out of that fluffy stage where like I lost a lot of baby fat in my face, just in general lost a lot of fat all over my body. And I came home just looking totally different. I felt different. I was more outgoing. I was more talkative. And so then I went to college at BYU, Idaho, and continued to try and lose weight and work, and was like more talkative and outgoing with the girls and dated a few times. Now keep in mind, my dating skills were rough. I was, it's funny because it's like, you think like, what's the point of dating in high school? Well, there's a good point in dating in high school because it teaches you skills. And I lacked all of those skills.
Tell me the skills you lacked, babe.
Just being able to communicate, just being able to talk, just have conversations. Like I said, I was really quiet. I said I was more outgoing, but I was still quiet. I was still in ways quiet in expressing what was on my mind, talking about things, just talking about the day, talking about likes and interests and all the stuff.
Like, would you say you were good at flirting?
No, I was awful with flirting. My parents weren't flirty people.
Mm,
They loved each other. But they just like took care of the kids. They took care of their family, and that was like what they both loved. They loved us as a kids. They loved their family, but they weren't flirty people. Like I rarely saw them like kiss or hold hands and that type of stuff. And so for me as a child, me never seeing that
yeah.
never really correlated that that was like abnormal or normal and something that should be put forth into my
So
relationship.
physical affection wasn't something that you
No,
were raised with.
no,
What
no.
about like verbal affection?
Yeah, verbal affection, not really. Like even just I love you, you're beautiful, you're this, you're handsome, not much. It wasn't until like after my mission, I remember having a phone conversation with one of my parents and at the end saying I love you, and that felt like
Huge.
that was huge. And they said I love you back, and I was like, wow, I don't think I've ever heard it like in that
Wow.
way.
Wow.
So yeah, just verbal affection, physical affection was something foreign to me. It was
Mm-hmm.
different.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when I started dating, it was just so awkward for me. Just so awkward,
Yeah.
so uncomfortable. The moments when you were on a date and it was quiet was like the most uncomfortable thing ever. I remember having a conversation one time with one of my sisters who was married, and I was like, do you guys like ever have times when you're like quiet and not talking? And she's like, yeah, all the time. And I'm like, and that's not awkward? And she's like, no. And that was like one thing where I was like, okay, if I can be with a girl and there's moments where it's like quiet and it doesn't feel awkward, that's when I like would know that it was like a good match. Cause I had dated a few girls at college where it was just, like I said, just so awkward. So um, I was like 2 semesters in. One girl had just broken up with me. Looking back, I just laugh because I'm just like, it was so impractical. It was just like, anytime I got a girlfriend, I was just so obsessed. Like, I had something that I had never had before.
Mm.
Like, where a girl likes me, like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
goodness, like,
Mm-hmm.
I want this. And
Mm-hmm.
so, anytime I got that and then it would like leave,
Mm-hmm.
I would like have this level of panic where I just
Mm.
would want it back.
But when you were with those girls, how did you cultivate the relationship? Was it like, oh, now looking back, I understand why they dumped me because I literally wasn't even texting them?
Yeah, like there was no chit chat and flirting throughout the day.
Romance.
There was like maybe I'd go take them flowers, or like my romance was definitely not probably what they had expected. I was like, hey, let's go out to the desert and go shoot guns. And they're
Yeah.
just like, okay. And they're just like way too shy and quiet to say anything different.
Yeah. Typical farm boy vibes.
Oh, typical farm boy vibes. Like
Well,
us,
shy farm boy vibes, I guess.
yes. I mean, I always did like homecoming and prom and did all of those. So I had a lot
But
of
be
fun.
honest, did your mom take care of like the date? Did she get plan it, or was that you?
We planned it,
Okay,
but she
okay,
would always like make like a nice dinner for us
for
back at our
sure,
house
for sure.
where we'd go to our house and have a nice dinner that my mom would make, and then we'd go to the dance. Keep in mind, like our small town, we didn't have like an Olive Garden or and either just a restaurant. It was just taco wagons that
Yeah,
we only had.
yeah,
So we had to do dinners at our homes,
yeah,
which is then awkward because then you're bringing your date home and your parents are there and all the
yeah.
things.
So also, let's just like paint the picture of like how you were raised, because your hometown didn't have a stoplight
No,
even,
no.
and like the closest Target or Walmart was like an hour away.
Yep. If
So
you
you
wanted to
had,
go to the mall, the movie theater, even McDonald's, like you name it, it was an hour away.
yeah,
We had two gas stations, two grocery stores, and then just a bunch of Mexican restaurants or taco wagons
yeah,
up and down our town.
yeah. So their town's like an orchard town. So there was just like a lot of farmers.
Yeah, a lot of immigrants from Mexico. Great, amazing people. You have the good and the bad with that, but um, I mean, there was a lot of Hispanics in our town, and so you really felt like the minority, like in the school, and then you were only left with like a few kids that you could even communicate with because a lot of these kids didn't speak
Right.
English.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into this, I'm sure, but I actually love going back to your hometown because it's so fascinating to see how everything is handpicked and all of like the cutting of the asparagus and like the intricate things that have to be done. And it's also vineyard country. So it's just really interesting.
Lots of apples. Basically, if you eat an apple or cherries, more than likely it came from my town.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I loved my town. I really did. I
Yeah,
loved
there's definitely something special.
everything about it. We lived right on the Columbia River, so we were able to go like boating sometime with friends. Just all of it. Like I loved the farm. I loved John Deere tractors. Just I loved getting dirty. I
Yeah, you
loved
do.
everything
You do
about
love
it.
John
I
Deere.
love the smell of alfalfa at 4 in the morning when the dew comes in. Like
Mm,
there's just that smell of fresh cut hay, fresh baled hay, all of it. Just loved it. So yeah, going back to college, like I said, I only dated like maybe two or three girls. And I was coming up on my break where it was a trimester system where you would go 2 semesters on, 1 semester off. And one girl had just like broken up with me at the beginning of the second semester. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take a break. Like, I'll just like go on dates, but I'm not like
okay,
on the
tell me
hunt
why you
for a
wanted a
girlfriend.
break. You like dated once and you're like, I'm over
Well,
it.
I wanted a break in my mind. I wanted a break because I wanted to go home during my off semester and not have like any attachments.
Yeah.
Um, I just really, because I had gotten home off my mission and immediately went to school, and I was still craving wanting to be back home, back on the farm, all those things. Like I still had an attachment to it. So,
Okay, wait, but you had dated now two girls,
yes,
and were you intimate with them at all?
no, I didn't
Okay,
kiss the first one. The second one, she kissed me once. We
like a
only
little
dated.
peck.
Yeah, it was just like very quick. And we were only together for like maybe a month. Like it was not that long. And of that month, we were apart for each other during the spring break for a week.
I mean, it's long enough to get some action,
Yeah, there was nothing
but
that
not for you.
no, there was nothing that happened. So I was like in this mindset where I just was really feeling down on myself. I'm like, I'm never going to get a girlfriend. Like, this is dumb. Like,
Yeah, that's pretty
just kind
emotional of
of
you.
like when you get dumped. And on both of them, I was the one that got dumped. I never did the
Oh,
dumping.
babe.
So then I was feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah.
And then I
Like this
thought,
is never going to work out.
yeah, exactly. So I thought, you know what? Forget this. Forget having a girlfriend. I'm just going to hang out with girls and the guys and have fun.
Because you had a lot of friends that were girls in
Yeah.
your ward and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So then, like a week or two later, I ran into Sadie
Yeah.
and saw her gorgeous face. And the story of how we met. Do we want to talk about how we met?
Yeah, I think so. You tell
It's a
yours.
cute story.
Yeah, you tell your side and then I'll tell my side because
I
it's
feel
different.
like our story, and I know everyone has their own story, but I love our story because it's just one of those moments where you're like, wow, the universe really had our back.
Oh, for sure.
Like the odds of us meeting each other and coming in contact with each
Mm-mm.
other were 1 in a million.
Well, and it might, I mean, I guess I'll just share this now and then you can share your part, but I felt like I had known all of the boys at that point. Like I had been in school for so long and I had dated so much. Like my
Yeah,
story's
you were a
very opposite from you.
social butterfly. Like
Hmm.
you had connections with everyone
Well, and I was
and you grew up
dating,
there.
yeah, and I was dating multiple men at the time. Like it was pretty rare for me to like, oh, I'm going to date you seriously. Although I wanted to, but I like was convinced I knew all of the guys who drove the trucks who were cute. Like I was convinced. So when I saw you that night, I was like, "Wait, what? Who is this man?" And I just think it's where we are really really lucky because things move so fast in that culture. Um and like do people really know each other? Like do people really like we didn't know each other. Anyway, I'm jumping ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, to answer that question, I feel like when you hang out every single day for, let's say, 6 months, you can get to know that person
Yeah, but there were
well
moments
enough
when we were first married where I was like, I don't know you.
for sure. Yeah, I agree.
And obviously we're like completely different now, but
Yes,
okay,
100%.
so tell your part of the story.
Okay, so I had just been dumped by that girl. I think it was like maybe a week later.
I thought you said you did the dumping.
No, I always got dumped.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. It
Oh,
was
hun.
always like them being like, I just don't think this is working out.
Yeah,
And
you're
then being
not
me
talking to me by.
and then me being like, what do you mean? I think we can fix this. We can, like, I was just so
Okay.
desperate,
Okay.
desperate for attention, affection, love, all of it, that I was willing to just bend over backwards to accommodate it.
Yeah.
But then they're just like, no,
Yeah.
there's actually another guy. Late, both of them, they ended up connecting with another guy like immediately afterwards.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, well,
Well, shit.
that's amazing. So, okay, it's May 16th. I had a roommate who
The fact
was,
he remembers the
I
date.
remember the date, May 16th,
What's
2008.
8? Sorry. Yeah,
Yeah,
2008.
2008. I was
Because we
going to
got
say 18, but I'm like, that
what?
doesn't make
No.
sense.
Yeah.
Um, May 16th, 2008. And thank goodness I had this friend. He grew up near the Rexburg area. He was older, like I think maybe 4 or 5 years older than me. He was really funny, really outgoing, super talkative, everything that like I wanted to be. And he's like, hey, let's go to this event. It was called Battle of the Dance. It was basically kind of like an American Idol, but dance at the school. And so we were like, oh, well, we don't have tickets. It starts at, I think, we'll just say 6. It starts at 6. We need to go get tickets. But because most of the time there, you had to buy tickets like days leading up at the box office type of situation at the school. And so we're like, let's go really early so we can make sure we can get tickets and we'll get a seat. So we go there early. I mean, so early that there were like 2 people in the entire auditorium that had maybe, I don't know, 1,000 seats. Like it was a big auditorium. And so we're like really early. We buy our tickets. We're standing in the entryway. And who walks in? Sadie Jane. She walks in with her roommate. And I'll never forget, she walked in and she looked at me like so fast and so smooth. She looked at me, caught my eyes, and then looked at my body, and then looked back up to my eyes and smiled, and then walked right in. And my roommate was standing right behind me. And I look at him and I was like, did you see that? And he's like, I sure did. We got to go talk to her. And keep in mind, my like, uh, my skills of picking up girls, all the things, I
Literally non-existent. And
non-existent.
I fought that part of the story for so long. I was like, I didn't do that. I didn't look you up and down, but I'm sure I did.
Oh, for sure. If we go up into heaven, it's going to be recorded.
Okay.
And so we look inside the auditorium. Sadie and her roommate, they sit down, and they sit down like right up in the front, right in the middle. So I'm like, how in the world are we going to pull this off? So we walk in, and there's another two people sitting directly behind you. And I'm like, if there's going to be a spot to sit, it's going to be right behind you. And so we're like, well, shoot, there's that other couple right behind them. What do we do? So we're sitting there trying to scheme and plan. Lo and behold, Sadie's watching me the whole time. She can see me awkwardly trying to figure this out.
We were like right on the side. I was like, this is so awkward.
Yeah. Everything about me was
You're
awkward.
so awkward,
I'm
babe.
still awkward.
Not so much now. I love your awkwardness.
So thankfully that couple got up and left. And so then me and my roommate went and sat down, and we didn't say anything. We just sat there, and then people started flooding in. A bunch of girls from my ward, they came in and sat right behind us. A bunch of people I knew were kind of all around us. And so I was chit-chatting with them. And then I hear my roommate chatting with Sadie. And I was like, what? No, this is my space. This is my territory. Like, this is my girl. Like, this is the one I'm going after. So I turn around, and Sadie's right in front of me, and we just start chit-chatting, and she's just laughing and giggling, and she's touching my knee, and like,
Yeah, I knew what I was doing.
she totally knew. She was a
And
pro.
also, I was like, I'm going to talk to the friend. And it turned out that the friend and I had like so much in common. We had like
Yeah, my
roped and
roommate.
rodeoed before.
Yeah, my roommate knew a lot of people that Sadie knew, and he actually knew you. He knew your name from the high school rodeo scene. So we're chit-chatting, and the event ends.
The word chit
And
chat,
yeah,
chit chatting. You've
chit-chatting.
literally said that 100 times.
Oh, that's what it was. It wasn't talk. It was just chit-chat.
What is the difference?
Chit-chat's just like, I don't know, it's just chit-chat. It's
I
just
don't know what
small.
that means.
It's just like small words. Just like, I don't know.
That's what you did. That's what
Yeah.
you are. You're a chit
It's not
chatter.
like talking is like, this is talking. It's just like in-depth conversation. Chit-chat's just
Okay.
like, oh, where'd you grow up?
Yeah.
Oh, I grew up here. Or what do you
Okay.
do for fun? What are you doing at school? That type of thing. So the event ends. We stand up, and my roommate's like, well, what are you guys doing tonight? Should we hang out? And I was like, whoa, this is like, he's going for it. He's just
Well, I
going
think I
for the
turned
home
around and I
run.
said something like, "We should hang out sometimes." And he was like, "What about tonight?"
Yeah. He's
Like
like,
I
what about
remember him
tonight?
like, yeah, proposing the tonight thing.
Yeah. And he's like, should we go out to the sand dunes and go have a bonfire? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. So we run back home, and I'm on like cloud nine. I'm just like so amped, so pumped. So we load up the things. I have a truck. It's not like, keep in mind, it was just a standard Dodge pickup, extended cab. Like, there were other guys there that had brand new trucks, big,
Yeah,
huge
the
lift
security
kits.
system salesman
Yeah, the
guys,
security guys,
which
the Apex guys, now Vivint.
I
They,
had done that and I had been done. I had sworn off the security salesman guy
yep.
because it was just messy. They were, in my experience, it was not good. I initially it was like smoke and mirrors, the big truck, like, oh, that they are all renting huge houses on the hill together. No, it ended up being not good for me.
Yeah, so I had just my farm truck, and I had my dirt bike.
I mean, it looked nice to me.
Yeah, I kept good care of it. So I had my truck and my dirt bike in the back, and I roll up, and Sadie's initial impression was like, oh no,
Yeah.
another security guy with a big truck and his
Hmm.
subwoofers and his thinks he's so hot, which
And
I thought I was pretty cool.
and you were like, the music was
Oh yeah, it was.
going.
I rolled up, and at the time, I think "Lovin' This
Oh
Club"
yeah,
by
I
Usher
remember.
was like the hit song at the moment.
Only for you.
Only for me. So I had that bump in, and I thought, I'm like, oh, she's gonna dig this music I'm into and all the
So
things.
loud, pulling up with that song.
So we get up, and keep in mind it's an extended cab, not like a full four door, but there was a bench in the back, and all four of us piled into the front seat. So Sadie was just like right up next to me, and I was obsessed, but on like level 10 of discomfort. So I just rolled with it, because I don't think I'd ever had a girl really that close to me like that before.
Oh my gosh. And he like, I don't think you said one word to me.
Oh yeah,
In fact,
I was quiet.
I'll like, I'm going to glitter or I'm going to like put my little bits.
Sprinkle,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sprinkle my bits of my part because into this story, I feel like that'll be better anyway. But when we had gone, I wasn't even going to go to this event. And I was like stretching after a run or something. Like I had no plans. And my friend Shaylee was on the dance. She did a bunch of dance classes. She was a dance major at the school. And she was like, I want to go watch my friends. I was like, perfect. But she actually thought it started earlier. So we got there early. I mean, literally just divine. Because if we hadn't gotten there early, don't think I would have ever seen you. But
No, not at
because,
all. Had we even just both gone to the event, there's no
no
way
way.
we would have ever seen each other.
Yeah. And so when I had seen him, I was like, oh, I had never seen him in school. And I feel like, not like I was, I mean, yes, I was always searching, but like I was also really busy. I was in nursing school. So I had classes all around campus. And I felt like I was like, I had been there long enough. I was supposed to graduate the next fall, winter, and I was going to go off to uh, California or Penn State to like do different like graduate programs. Anyway, so when I walk up and I saw you, immediately I saw your blue eyes and you were wearing this like blue, was it a Hollister shirt
Probably, I guarantee it was
with like
a
with
cargo shorts
your long cargo
and
shorts
yeah,
like go over
I
your
loved
knee.
my khaki cargo shorts
Yes.
and my polo shirts and
Yeah,
thought I was so cool.
you were so cool. You were totally so cool. So I like walk up and I look at you and I looked at your blue eyes and I immediately saw and I could see the kite. Like immediately I was drawn to your kindness in your eyes. I was like, oh my, and first I was like, you're gorgeous. And then I was like, oh, your eyes are so kind and so gorgeous, so blue. Anyway, so it was fun when you guys ended up like sitting right behind us. And your friend, I actually thought the same thing. I was like, oh, your friend's like trying to get into this and I'm not interested, but I'm going to become friends with him to get to you. Immediately, I could tell how shy you were. You literally said no words to me. That's why I was like tapping on your knee to be like, okay,
I'm just a quiet, shy
speak,
person.
speak to me.
I know.
And you weren't like, you were really, really quiet. You had that like smile on your face that you have now. And you were just kind of like into it, but not really literally like the whole night. So I got really excited um, when you came and picked me up and I was for sure like this truck, what in the world? And this music. And I was like, wow, okay. But I was also into it. Anyway, so then we go to the sand dunes.
Yeah, so we make our way to the sand dunes. I don't think I'd ever done this with any other girls before, so it was like total on a whim, just
It totally seemed
pulling
like you
it
knew
out of
what
our
you were
sleeve.
doing though.
So we went out to the sand dunes, made a little fire. I think my buddy had like a golf club and some golf balls, and so we hit the golf balls off the sand dunes,
No,
and then
we ran.
we would
Yeah.
run and jump off the edge of the sand dunes, which was a blast. I remember watching Sadie do it and just looking at her body and just how like I don't know, just cute and hot and delicious you were. And I was like, wow, if only.
Dude, I looked at the you too because you were the first one that jumped, and I was like, he's so athletic. Like, wow.
And then we were sitting by the fire, and I remember feeling really self conscious because my buddy knew a lot of the people that Sadie knew because they like grew up in the same area. And so they were just chatting just nonstop, like just talking. And so I was like doing my best to like inject my thoughts and words into the conversation,
No,
but there wasn't much.
you weren't.
No,
I don't think you spoke. I literally don't. And I don't remember any of the performance. I don't even know if I watched any of the dance.
same. I don't remember any of the
I
dances.
was just trying so hard to like get you to be interested in me.
Oh, I was interested. So it worked. So we go back to Sadie's house. We're talking and hanging out at her, not house, apartment. And so we're there. And
Wasn't it that night that I asked you to write on my paper?
yes, they had this big, huge, massive, oh, like poster board paper that like took up the whole wall, like the paper that comes out of a roll. So it's like massive. And they had a bunch of like random quotes written on it.
Like I was doing
And
affirmations before I even knew what affirmations were.
yeah, so she's like, why don't you write something on there? So what do I write?
Big gulps, huh?
I thought it was so funny.
You literally took so long to write it. I was like so excited because it was a perfect way to like Maybe you were going to write like some like beautiful poem or like some
No,
beautiful quote. No, like this guy's got nothing. All he's
no.
got is big gulps on. And I didn't even know
The
the
only thing that
reference.
occupied my mind at that time was just trucks, dirt bikes, and that was about it. There wasn't
The potential for girls,
and girls, but
but you couldn't even talk to girls.
there wasn't much in there.
So I was like, wow, okay. But still, it was like all these red flags, quote unquote, that I had in my mind were dissolved. Like I couldn't even put a red flag, even big gulps. It was like your humanness was trying so hard to red flag me, and I like didn't even care. I was so immediately attracted to you and your energy, and I could just see who you were so plainly that I was like, I didn't care.
Yeah,
You were just so sweet. And like if you know Jeff, the kindness, the like you're just the kindest, most gentle, good human, and I could feel that.
thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So we're hanging out.
So can I say this next part?
Sure.
Because it's awful. It's the worst. You're the
Well,
worst.
I wanted to say it because it's my accountability story.
I know, but I have to say it first, and then you can tell your accountability story,
Okay.
maybe.
Because this is like your favorite part.
This is my favorite part. So I'm like thinking he's going to ask for my number, right? I'm like, oh, this was so fun.
I don't think I'd ever asked a girl for their number.
I mean,
Keep in
that's
mind.
very clear. Very clear. But I was like, this is the start of something really, like, I just had a feeling. And I'll never forget, you stood up and you're like, well, I'll see you around campus. And you walk out. I was devastated, Jeff. I was devastated. And I was like, I can't let this guy go. I knew in my mind, I had never seen you on campus before. And because I had never seen you on campus, there was no way I'd see you again. Like I just knew. And so I was like, well, wait, what if we exchange numbers? I just got so ballsy. So, and I would say, if I was being realistic, I think maybe that's why I dated a lot, because I didn't play that game very well of like, you have to court me, you have to court me. Like if I was interested in somebody, I mean, I'd pretty much let it know, but I was also super nervous too. Anyway, regardless, I asked you for your number.
You sure
So
did.
you tell me what is your accountability part to that? Because that's the story.
I think the thing that was going across in my mind was a lot of the girls that I was interacting with were kind of like in my circle of influence, circle of friends. And so I kind of thought or maybe had this mindset, well, like now you're in my circle of friends, circle of influence. So I'll probably will see you on campus now that I've seen your face. And so that was one part. But the biggest part is like, it didn't even like really cross my mind to ask for your number. I don't even know why. Like
Well, you
it
said
wasn't even like a step. It wasn't even like a thing where it's like, oh, so as a man, when you date, you're
mm,
supposed to ask the
didn't
girl
you
for her
have those
number.
like
No.
meeting, like those classes in mutual, how to like court a woman?
No. We
Oh, come on.
yeah.
Well, didn't you say something how you were like, well, I had decided to not date. So,
That too. I had also been like in this mindset again going back like where I had just been dumped and I didn't want to be dumped again and I just wanted to go home. So there were multiple things I think circulating in my
yeah,
mind
yeah,
where like I was just like, well, peace out. See
yeah,
you on campus.
yeah.
So she asked for my number and we exchanged numbers. And then the next day, I was working at the time. I get home from work and you're like, hey, you want to hang out tonight?
Literally the next day. Okay, so then I have to add this part in the story. I'm actually curious if you had anything like that or you just like went to bed, which you probably just went to bed. But for me, when we exchanged numbers, I mean, my heart was beating. I was so terrified, but we exchanged numbers and I was like, okay, because there was something so different about you. Now, I wasn't a virgin. I had been dating a multiple men. Like my story was much different than yours, but I knew I had a feeling that something was different and I didn't really know anything about you at that point. I remember I gave you your number, you left, and I kneeled down to pray that night. And I closed my eyes. And at that point in my life, I was not meditating. Like the only kind of connection I had to self was in prayer. The only real stillness I had in my life was prayer. So I closed my eyes and I vividly saw me like at the kitchen window. Oh my gosh, I forgot about this until right now.
I remember this.
Yeah, like I was doing the dishes and I was looking out. And were you outside or were you behind me?
I was outside.
And were you with our kids or something?
It
Or is it
was
just you?
you were like envisioning me outside, I think, with our kids, like in this
Yeah.
like kind of like this like farm
Mm-hmm.
type setting, I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Literally our house now.
Literally our house
Oh
now.
my gosh. I just full circled that. Wow, that's gonna make me emotional. I haven't remembered that part for so long, but
Yep.
I literally had a vision and I remember getting emotional about it. And even before I prayed, I knew you were supposed to be my husband. Like I just knew, like in that vision, I was like, oh, whoa,
This
this
is
is
my
it.
husband. This is my
This is
guy.
literally it. So I remember praying and asking God to, it was like, my prayer was, please keep intent, like good intent with this, with spirit with me the whole time so that I can be guided if this is continual to be good. So like I almost felt as if what I was doing in a way was, everything spells, everything's spelling, everything is intention. In a way I was like locking in, I was like opening the ceremony of our relationship and locking in an intention with it. And because
I
of
love
that,
that.
yeah, I really feel like I was just guided.
Totally. I
And
That's why like I think all relationships are guided. Whether the relationships don't work out, like everything happens for a reason.
yeah.
So like this is kind of a tangent, but like for those that have gone through a divorce or whatever that may look like that relationship at that time for that duration was meant to happen for a purpose. Like I think back to like even the girls that I dated before you, like they all had a piece and a purpose in something that I learned from and that I'm grateful for those experiences.
Mhm.
Like I don't look at those being like, oh man, like what a waste of time.
Mhm.
And so I feel like for a lot of you out there listening to this, if you've gone through a separation, divorce, or rough times, like just have gratitude for
Mhm.
what that has gotten to you where you are now.
Mhm.
Because we've even had that like in our relationship where we've gone through rocky times and I want to like hold bitterness against the past. And there was a shaman that taught me where she was like, have gratitude for the past because it has gotten you to where you are now. And once I learned that and like applied that to myself, I was like, oh, okay. Like I can have gratitude for what happened and to where I am now.
Mhm.
So, okay. So going back to the story, I get home from work. Well, going back before that, I go home and I'm just like amped. Like I was so excited. It was like the best night of my life. I was just, I don't know, cloud nine again, just so pumped. And even my roommate, he was like, dude, this girl's amazing. Like, how incredible, this and that. And um, so I remember he told me, he's like, oh, her dad is this. Like, she grew up, like, this is like kind of like who she is and all these things. But I wasn't interested in that. Like, I wasn't interested in the fact that, like, you came from like a famous, wealthy family in the area. Like, that just, I had no interest in that. I was like, no, like I can see and know that there's something special about her and it's not tied to money. So I
Yeah.
wasn't like in this like mindset where it's like, oh, now I've like really got to like push this.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I felt that, like how you said everything comes with gratitude. Like I don't know what I was thinking I was wanting actually back then. Like I don't think I actually knew what I wanted because I was so brainwashed and conditioned to believe that I needed to have this certain man. And so as I was like trusting that or just blindly going, I mean, I was a baby, but I also was really conditioned to believe like, you have to get married right now. You cannot have sex. You need to get married and you need to have kids. And so I definitely feel like I had that conditioning in me, but then it wasn't working out. And I also had this desire to like play and be playful and like look around and date a lot. And so it was just like I felt very conflicted with that. And so with all that to be said though, is I was attracting, it was very clear that the men I was attracting, it wasn't it. So when you came into my life and I just felt the difference, like the kindness and the goodness, like I genuinely saw your higher self come through. And that's why I was so guided. And like that doesn't happen. That did never happen with me. I was just kind of like blindly messing around to try to figure out what would stick.
Yeah.
So it definitely felt like everything up until that point was so contrast that I had to feel that to be able to trust whatever it is what it was with us. Because quite frankly, also like there wasn't a lot of affirmation or affirming from you. And so I'm like, well, I'm just going for this. So that's kind of like where we started of like it really was God driven from the beginning.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. There's so many times I look back, especially when we first had met at the beginning, and even different moments through our relationship where I'm like, man, that was so special, May 16th. That's why I never forget the date, because it's like it
So
was
cute.
divinely
And
inspired.
16 is double of 8 and it was 2008. Like that's a really cool number.
You love your
I
numbers.
know.
It's so
I would.
funny. You just like to look into all the things. Was it a full moon or something?
Probably we need to look
What
back.
what planet was in retrograde? Like what things looking back? So
Okay, so
the
you
next
get home, you're
day,
excited.
then yeah, I get home. I'm excited. I go to work the next day. I get home and you text me, and I
Yeah.
don't think I had. There was just something so exciting and special, and so you asked me. You said, "Would you like to go with me out to my parents to go ride four wheelers?" And I asked my roommate, like, "Dude, this girl asked me to go to go out tonight. Like, what should I do?" He's like, "Heck yeah, you should do it." So I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna do it."
I don't know how I got so ballsy. I was so aggressive. I was so aggressive. And I
Well, I
mean,
think it's just you knew, and you
I
knew
know.
that you needed to take charge. And
Yeah, you were not
women
doing anything.
and the women, like the strong women in this world, are ones that take charge, and us men will then kind of like
Follow.
follow, and then will act on that
Mm-hmm.
inspiration and that charge. And I feel like that's what we did, and it's carried us through our relationship, where
Mm-hmm.
you've always been the one that's like, hey, I have this idea, or I have this knowing, or I have this feeling, like, let's do this. And then I'm always the one that's like, okay, are you sure about that? And then it always ends up working out so
Yeah.
amazing in the end.
Yeah, well, and I mean, talking about human design, I'm an ego authority. So I literally just know. Like, if I know and if it benefits me, it's going to benefit the community, it's going to benefit our relationship. And you are emotional authority. So if I had waited, I don't know if we would ever be married
I would have had to have ridden my wave
for a long
for a
time.
long time and
And by then,
still not had
yeah.
the what's the word I'm looking for? Just the confidence to
Mm-hmm.
be able
Mm-hmm.
to go forward with it.
Yeah.
Because I really struggled with my self confidence,
Yeah.
with decision making, with whatever.
You always had, right?
Oh, for sure. Even still, to to this day, I still struggle with that self confidence to be like, oh, should I post this? Should I say this? What should I do? It's
It's
always a
getting better. It's
constant
a
thing.
beautiful medicine for you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So
Well, I was going to say, like, that day I had gotten my hair done. My hair back then was like my only way I felt like to express myself. I always wanted to express myself in like a little bit more of I guess you could say rebellious ways, but like we had to wear certain clothes on campus. Obviously back then I wasn't even going to
they had to be
consider
pants.
tattoos.
They had to be no.
Yeah, no holes in your pants at the testing center.
Yeah,
Definitely not showing your shoulders.
we all looked like a bunch of robots on campus because
Yeah,
we all basically looked the
couldn't
same.
really express ourselves.
Yeah.
So I don't think you could dye your hair fully like a different color. So I would like do fun.
She always had this little tiny spot kind of hidden. So when her hair was down, let's say down for church, you couldn't see it. But then if she wanted to pull it back in a ponytail or a bun or whatever, then you'd see it, and it just looked so hot.
It
It
was like
was
my
this
little,
cute little rebellious
mhm.
moment.
It was like pink or purple or green.
Yeah.
So I was getting my hair done and I just was like, I'm not waiting around. One thing I'm really grateful for that has been really helpful is I've just been always like, I just trust the pings. I trust the guidance that I'm getting from spirit and God always. And so I was like, I'm not doing anything tonight. Like, why not? Like, why not? So, especially because I just knew it was supposed to be something. I didn't know what that meant. I just knew it was supposed to be something. So I texted you while I was getting my hair done, and I guess I don't know. I don't usually do like the invite to the parents' house at first.
Well, to give some context to that, if you don't mind me sharing this aspect of it, Sadie grew up in a very wealthy family in the area. So their house was big, like they had money, but Sadie was not the type.
Yeah, I
And
don't like
even,
talking about this. So this is interesting that we're talking about it. But I'll tell you
well,
why I don't like talking about it in a
I,
second.
I like to bring, because we don't talk about it much, but I want to bring it up because one thing I noticed was Sadie wasn't the type where she flaunted it, and neither was her family. Like they had the money, they had the things, but they like were very just conservative with what they did. And so
Yeah.
for a normal person to be taken to like her home, it could come across in a negative way or an uncomfortable way. And so if I was you, I would be feeling nervous. Oh, I just met this guy and I'm bringing him to my house. And what's he going to think?
It was
Like,
very unlike me. In fact, I don't know if I had ever
because
done
most,
that.
because most time, like at college, when you go on dates, it's like, oh, let's go out to dinner. Let's
Or let's
like,
get like an ice cream from McDonald's because we have no money.
yeah.
Like,
But Sadie was like, no, I want to take him to the farm.
honestly, I feel like it's because I trusted you. Like, I just knew that there was something special.
Totally.
And also going back to the wealth thing, I mean, this is like kind of a tangent on this podcast, but I love that not a lot of people know about my upbringing because they immediately assume that that's why I'm successful. And it couldn't be further from the truth. So my stepfather, father now, you guys know we talk about this. I have multiple dads, but he is self-made, very successful entrepreneur. He grew up in a very, 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 very poor home. His mother dumpster dived. His dad worked on the railroad, and he worked so hard to create the businesses that he has.
One of my favorite stories that he tells is when he was a little kid and he slept in the attic of his parents' bedroom. And one night he remembers his dad coming in and crying to his mom and was like, I'm so sorry that I haven't been able to provide for the family. Like, you could just, there was one of those moments where the father was basically like, I'm a failure and I can't provide for this family and I'm so sorry. And it was at that moment that Sadie's dad was like, I will never ever be put in that situation again. And I'm going to work so hard to provide for my family. So I will never be in that situation. And that's exactly what he's done. Like
Yeah,
he's worked so hard. And I don't know of a person that works harder
I
than
know.
him. I
I
mean,
know.
he's in his late 70s and still puts
He's-
in all the
yeah.
hours. Like he's an intense guy and
He's
he works
created
hard.
incredible jobs for people. I mean, it's an incredible it's been beautiful. And like I said, I think I said this in another podcast, but it's been beautiful to see his example for me. And because of the way that he raised us, I believe that's why I've become my own entrepreneur. So
Because he was like, I worked hard for who I am. You kids need to work hard for who you are.
yeah,
So
we
go
can
get an
do like
education, go do
mhm,
all those things. And so that's
that's what
how
he
say,
did.
yeah, that's exactly how you were raised and what you did. So
We
let's
can
go.
do well. I was going to say this. I have to say one more thing about it. I'm so sorry
This
because you
is kind of,
opened up the can of worms,
I know, I'm
Jeff.
so sorry, but I felt like it was an important part because like I
Yeah.
grew up very like, I'm not going to say poor, but like like I had old dirt bikes. Like everything that we had was just very minimal or old, and we just worked hard. Like we worked hard for what we had, and so yeah, so it was definitely a different lifestyle for me.
Yeah. I think it's okay. Like we could probably do a whole nother podcast on this concept of wealth, but I want to say this just really quick for context since the can of worms are open. Um, but my father always wanted us, he never wanted this concept of like third generational wealth or for us to feel entitled. And it was very clear that that was the case, which is, like I said, why we've created our own company. He has not put one dime, not one dime into SSJ, and nor has he helped us at all. He helped pay for my education as long as I had a certain GPA. And then,
Which I didn't.
yeah, so Jeff did not get his education paid for.
When we first met, my GPA was 2.6 or something awful, 2.8. I don't know. It
You
was
did not
below.
take.
below a 3.0.
education seriously.
I did not.
Yeah. So, and I knew growing up, like we had to pay half for all of our stuff. I always had a job. I always shoveled shit out of stalls. Like I was always working hard. And that continued when we got married. I knew that there wasn't any kind of handouts at all, which is why I worked as a labor nurse. And then I worked as a blogger. And then we've worked as an entrepreneur. And I'm so grateful for that work ethic because of what we've created.
Oh, Sadie's always had such a hustle drive. It's always been amazing. Like, I am a worker. Like, I will get a job and I will work that job, but I'm not much of like a dreamer, entrepreneur, hustler like the way Sadie is. She just will get these ideas in her mind. She's like, I'm going to create this course. I'm going to create this retreat. I'm going to take 12 women backpacking in the middle of the desert. Like, she just does it. And it's incredible. It's really
Mm,
inspiring to be able to like witness you in that and to
thanks, babe.
support you in it. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a whole nother thing as well because I couldn't do any of it without you.
thanks.
But it's been interesting to, that work ethic really carried me. And I think that's why another reason why I was so attracted to or like wanted to marry for love rather than money. Not because I thought I was going to have it when I was older, because there's no guarantee we'll get any money. My dad is extremely wealthy, but has made sure that I'm working. And, to be completely frank, for the first handful of years of our marriage, there was a lot of bitterness there. Like we were in a one bathroom home with five family members, and we were trying to remodel. And I was like, dude, throw me a bone. But I am so glad he never did. I am so glad he never did
Well, a
because
lot of people are in this situation where you're first married and you see other people your age where their parents like are like, "Oh, you need to get into your first home. Here, we'll pay your deposit." And we weren't that way. We were
no,
like, we've got to like be creative and figure out how to get into a home.
it's been the biggest blessing. We have to do another podcast on this because I have to tell everybody all of the intricate ways that why I'm so grateful. One, that he never helped us, and two, that nobody really knew who he was and still don't really. And I'm so grateful for that because um we're providing our he still doesn't provide us anything. Like literally, we are providing our own income. But instead of giving me all these things and us just like I would have no purpose in my life. My life would be worthless in my opinion, in my eyes, if I didn't have the opportunity to help women and build the audience we did. But I do think it's important a part of our story because
It's important because to go back to that
yeah,
date,
yeah,
Sadie picks me up. We go to her parents' house. It's this big, gorgeous, beautiful house. They're on this amazing ranch with just it was gorgeous. But I was not like in this mindset where I was like just completely, I don't know, awestruck in a way where it's like, oh, like yeah, this is what I want. It was my eyes and my focus were completely on Sadie, and I just knew that she wasn't caught up in that as well. Like I just knew that she was just a good person, just a good hardworking person that wasn't spoon fed
yeah.
basically.
Well, and if you didn't know that then, you would eventually find out really quick
Oh, for
because
sure.
it wasn't like we had a huge wedding. Like they didn't give us really anything for the wedding.
No, and it was great, and I'm grateful for that.
Oh, it was so everything that we've gotten and everything that we've had to struggle with literally is why we're still married.
Yeah. I
Our
think
tiny apartments
I think
are
struggle is great. I mean, if you just give your kids or give people whatever they ask for, they don't learn the concept of putting in the struggle or feeling the discomfort of not having the instant
even the
gratification.
homes that we've gotten, like literally just God has been like, okay, this one has been such an investment opportunity. And now we understand that.
Oh yeah, and now we
And it's
like are
so much
so
worthwhile.
and we're so grateful
Yeah.
for the homes that we have
Yeah.
because we know that we had to put in the work and the effort to be able to get into each home
Each
that we
home was
have.
such a labor.
And each home was so divinely inspired of how we found it,
Yep.
how we got into it,
Yep.
all the things. So
So we go
we go to our
ride four
house.
wheelers,
There's two four-wheelers there. We get on them.
which my parents are really private. And so even them saying yes to this was a big deal. Like we don't, they're very private and they
Yes.
were really mindful and careful of me too. So I feel like they just, And I had had a pretty nasty breakup before that that had nothing to do with money. It was actually the guy I had previously dated. I told him I wasn't a virgin and he like went crazy and he had to like go talk to my bishop. And that was a whole nother part of my
Multiple
story.
times talking to your bishop,
Hmm.
multiple times asking you, like very
It was really,
gaslighting,
yeah, it was very emotionally
very,
abusive.
yeah, very abusive, where he was just like, I just don't think I can love you knowing that you're not a virgin, which
Yeah.
is so, it's such an interesting thing because for anyone to believe in the atonement or forgiveness, like that goes against that. Like you're
Yeah.
supposed to just forgive people. And
Yeah.
once Sadie had told me, I was like, well, you've gone through the process. You've like repented. You've been forgiven. So
Yeah. Back then, that was like something that was important to us.
so to
But
me
even when I told you, it wasn't a big deal.
it wasn't a big deal because you had gone through it.
Yeah. So
So we go on the I want to get to this part.
I know. I have to finish that part, that thought really quick
Okay.
because I said that because my parents really liked that guy.
Oh, yes.
And they were like, "What are you doing? Like, it's okay that he's like figuring it out." And I'm like, "No, he's literally so emotionally abusive. I have to." So after him, I was kind of like, "Well, I'm just going to play around and I'm not going to let anybody come to, like, I'm not going to let my parents meet anybody." Like, after him and before him, they didn't really meet anybody. Like, I was pretty standoffish, but I just knew. Anyway, so we're on the four wheelers.
So yeah, we go on the four wheelers and she takes me up to one of the fields where um there were some cattle that were grazing and we go park and we're kind of up on this like little bench or butte where you could kind of look over like Idaho Falls area where she grew up, and the sun was setting and we're just sitting there talking. And it was at that moment that I was like, this is who I'm supposed to be. This is who I'm supposed to marry. Like I just
Mm,
knew. Like I just there was just a knowing.
mm,
Like just everything about you. One thing about Sadie is when I'm with her, I feel just this sense of being at home, just this sense
mm,
of like peace. And that's what I had instantly felt when I was with you, where like that discomfort or that awkwardness or that feeling of either loneliness or we'll call it homelessness, it was gone. And I just felt at peace and at home being in your presence. And so then I wanted to be with you
all the time.
all the time. And basically, after that night, we hung out every single day.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I will never forget. Do you remember who called you while we were on the four wheelers?
my mom.
Your mom. And back then I
And I
was,
took the call and I talked to her for a little bit and hung up. And Sadie was like, oh, he loves his mom.
yep,
He's got a good relationship with his
yep,
mom. And like, that was one thing that you loved.
which turned out to be so beautiful and also had its own challenges a little bit. And maybe we'll go into that, but it was beautiful to see that he had a good relationship with his mother. I thought that that was like so stunning.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, we
We dated. So that was May that we met. We dated throughout that whole semester, totally just obsessed with each other. We were both in school full time. And then we ended that semester. It was like August, I think. I needed to go back home because I didn't have a place to stay at in Rexburg. I needed to go back home and work on the farm for a bit. And so I went home and I worked for a few weeks, and all the hours I put in on the farm went directly to paying for her engagement ring or wedding ring. And it was really special that it worked out perfectly because the amount of time that I put in paid for it exactly.
how much was it again? Do you remember?
I think in total it was like 2,200 or something.
Which was like millions of dollars
Oh, it was so
back
much
then.
money back then for us, for me. So I get back, it was September. I think it was September 9th. I come back um, to see Sadie. In the meantime, like we had been talking on the
I
phone
go
every
up to your
day.
house in Washington to see your
Oh, yes,
family.
that's right. You came to my house for one weekend
Yeah.
and stayed with us. That was fun. I remember picking you up at the airport. Had like dyed your hair because you were blonde when I met you. And when you showed up, you had like dark
Of course I
black
did.
brown hair.
Yeah.
and I was just obsessed with you. Okay, so I get back from working on the farm. I propose to Sadie. She says yes. We're just head over heels for each other. Just so excited to like be
Well,
engaged.
we have to go back a little bit. I don't know. We don't need to go like super intense. I'm not sure how, but I think this is a funny part because we had been hanging out and I worked as a like operating manager at the school because I always another stipulation
A phone
a phone
operator. So
operator.
like when you called late at night for anything, Sadie was the one that
Yeah.
answered the phone.
So another stipulation of getting my education paid for was I had to have a really high GPA and then I always had to have a job. And then I always like the education was paid for, but I had to pay for my car, my insurance, my phone, like all the things. Anyway, so I was working as a phone operator and one night he like came and watched a movie with me and we held hands and I will never forget it. He like looked at me and was like, I don't.
I said, I just don't hold hands with anyone.
Yeah, I was like,
So
be so for real right now, Jeff Sabin.
so I was basically like, are you like, are we boyfriend
That was
girlfriend?
like
Like
his way of asking me
let's
out.
commit to this.
I'm like, I literally hold hands with everybody, but okay. So that was he was like, we're serious. And I was like, okay. So I like ended my relationship with all the other guys I was dating. And that's really when we like started to become serious.
Yep.
So then, yeah, I
So
asked
we get
himself, yep.
engaged. I'm working. She's in school. We just continue hanging out, doing our thing. I felt really at home and welcomed in with her family, loved the brother in laws. Her other sisters, she had one other sister that was also dating or engaged at the same time. And then one that had just been newly married, like for a few years. I think they had a little kid at the time at that point. So it was like a perfect time where I was in this family, just perfect age for us because everyone else, like all the other guys, all the other brother-in-laws were like my age. We all got along great, loved it.
What
Um,
about your family?
my family was different. I had three older sisters, two of them were married, and Sadie came in kind of just this like baby. And I really don't think any of them fully liked her because she Sadie, just the way that she is, she loves to just kind of like question things, kick up the dust, like be the rebel. Like the fact that her latest like
My
her
mastermind training.
mastermind is Sacred Rebels,
I
like
know.
that's who she is. She is a sacred rebel.
Yeah.
So they love her. My mom loves her, but
They
it's
did not want me to marry him,
yeah,
guys.
she was definitely a rebel.
Should we tell the story of the bikini? We should tell the story.
Let's tell that story. So, okay, so sorry. We're going to go way back. This is back into May
Well,
when we first met. So, when we first met,
this was before you asked me to marry you.
no, this is when we very first
Oh, I
met.
didn't realize that. So they stalked me
So, when we
at the
very
very
first
beginning.
met, now keep in mind, I told my parents everything. I didn't hide anything.
Literally everything.
Yeah. So, I told them, like, I met this girl. This is her name. Obsessed with her, yada, yada. And they find her on Facebook and they go way back to, I don't know,
It wasn't way back. It was maybe the winter.
the winter before. Well, you had a lot of pictures at the time on Facebook,
Yeah, yeah.
so it was back. They go way back and they find a picture of her on a snowmobile, her and another girl, and they had these big coats on, and Sadie had the coat open and was like this, and she was in a bikini.
Dun dun
A
dun.
bikini. And my parents called and they were like so upset. They're like, you can't date this girl, the mother of your kids wearing a bikini. Like, that's not okay. You can't do this. And I knew, like, at that point, I knew that she was the right one. And so I was like, I talked to them for a long time. Like, no, I'm not breaking up with her. And finally, we came to the compromise. I said, I will ask her to take the picture off of Facebook, but I'm not breaking up with her. And so they're like, fine. So then at that point, I was on a trip, I think in West Yellowstone with like a bunch of my roommates and their girlfriends to go visit one of my roommates, like dairy or something in Cody, Wyoming. And so I came back that when we came back from the trip, I saw you and I said, hey, I have something really awkward I need to ask you, but can you take that picture down off of Facebook? And it was so uncomfortable, so awkward. But you were like, yes, that's totally fine. I can do that. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm really glad I did that because looking back, like there were actually many moments when we were first married that I was that there that hold or held a lot of bitterness for me because I was extremely judged and ridiculed. And I also had a bitterness that you asked me. I was like, "How dare you?" But I loved you. And at that point, I was okay because it made you uncomfortable. So there was like maybe some respect there. But it worked out because, well, it's funny because it was always something that kind of hung over our relationship.
Yeah, there was always this thing where Sadie would have a different point of view or perspective on things. Like, for example, bikinis. I grew up being taught and understood that bikinis were bad, that you could only wear one piece and that was it. I grew up in a house where we didn't drink Diet Coke because it had caffeine. Like everything was very like strict. And
Yeah.
whereas like Sadie grew up where things could be questioned, things weren't maybe as strict, or she questioned it
I
herself.
don't think that's the, yeah. My
She,
family is extremely strict.
well, I mean, they still drink like Diet Coke and like they have,
I guess there's strict meters, but as
yes,
far as church principles, our families were very much same. Like I was never allowed to wear a bikini. So when I went to college, it was like free. I always wanted to break out of the mold.
Sadie, like even to this day, she questions everything.
Hmm.
Whereas like I'm very much like just a rule follower. I don't want to like kick up any dust or cause any problems. And so it was good for us because it allowed me to start challenging maybe what I believed, even though it took me, I was very stubborn. It took me a very long time. Where Sadie had to be very, very patient with me, where she's like, no, like, I believe it's okay to wear a bikini, or no, I believe it's okay to have tattoos. And she would just do it. She just had this knowing and this self confidence to just do what she wanted because she felt and knew that it was right. Whereas, like, for me, it was like, oh, I don't want to cause any problems. So I'm just going to follow the rules.
Yeah. Rather than like finding your own truth, you were just like, well, I was told this. I guess I believe it. I don't know if I believe it or not, but it's keeping me safe. It's
Yep.
it's keeping me quiet. I'm not like causing issues, so I'm just going to stay here.
And this is something that we see in a lot of couples where one of the person in the couple question things or wants to do things a little differently, and then the other person really struggles with that partner doing something differently. Now, I feel like in most couples, like you're not going to see it where the two of them see everything
Yeah.
the exact same way,
Yeah.
eye to eye.
Yeah.
And so it's okay if one of the other partners or the spouse sees things differently or wants to do things differently. And the best thing that you can do as the other spouse is to just hold space and know that the other person is where they are, and go to that person and just be like, listen, like everything's okay. I choose you. I'm not going anywhere. This is just something that I believe in.
Yeah.
And it took us a long time to be able to get to that point in our marriage where I didn't have to fear that Sadie was going to leave me
Well, it
and
took
run
us a while
off.
because you wouldn't hear me because all you had was fear in your
Oh,
body.
I was terrified.
But also you were
I was,
putting other things before me
yes,
outside of our marriage.
I was more terrified about what others would think, about what my parents would think, about our friends, neighbors, relatives, you name it, because I wanted to like portray this image. And Sadie was like, no, that's not my image. This is like, I feel this is my image. This is who I am, what I want to do.
Well, and a lot of the time, a lot of our first years of marriage, I did feel really alone because I felt like conversations like that couldn't even be had because you were so close to them. And so I just leaned on my angels and guides, really. Like I had a lot of um experience on my knees with angels and guides that were unseen. Like I had a lot of experience with that. So I knew what it was like to ask my angels to support me. And so when this whole thing came out, I remember praying multiple times, like, please, to Jesus, literally, like, you're still with me. You're not leaving. Even though I'm wearing a bikini, you're still here. And that's what guided me. That's why I was able to, I really feel like that's another reason why I was able to feel so solid in my own truths, even though it was going against literally everybody, your family, my family at some points, you. And I'm like, no, I'm not backing down on my truths because I know that it's coming from a accountable, integral place for the most part. Now, that doesn't mean that was like that our whole marriage. Like there's definitely moments of like not even mess up, just consequences as to me trying to figure out my truth. But we got there eventually. That's life, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So we get married and it's not all rainbows and unicorns.
No,
It's hard.
it was. Yeah, we got married that December.
Hmm.
Sadie had just graduated like days before we got married. Um, so we get married and we move into this one bedroom apartment together. And I just remember like thinking, who is this person? And you were thinking the same thing. Who is this person? Like once you're like there sleeping in the same bed and finally you like have this moment where it's like, okay, now you're married. Now you can like have sex and now you can like do all the things
Yeah.
that
All of
you
a
were
sudden it's
told.
like everything's not bad anymore.
Yes. And now all of a sudden, all the things that you were told were bad are now good. And it just was this like, I don't know, this is a really awkward stage, but we loved each other. Thankfully, we just loved each other so much. And at the time, we
Yeah.
had one vehicle. So I would drive Sadie to the hospital. She worked as a labor and delivery nurse on the night shift. So I'd drive her up, drop her off. I'd go back home, do my homework. I was in school full time, also working. So we didn't have a lot of free time. Sadie was working 12-hour shifts, three, sometimes five times a week.
I was totally off too. So like Jeff's always been the kind of guy to fall asleep early and wake up early. And my schedule was so off. So I always wanted to like play at night and he'd fall asleep. And then that was a disconnect and I'd be crying and I'd be the only one awake. And then I'd fall asleep finally and he'd like come and kiss my cheeks at like 8 a.m. And I'm like, no, I have to sleep. I'm working tonight.
Yeah,
So
it'd
it
be
was,
Saturday morning and she's not working. I'm like, come on, let's go like do something. Let's go on a hike. Let's go like be a couple together. She's like, no, I
I'm
just got
so
off my
tired.
shift like
Yeah.
a night or so ago. I need to sleep. And
Yeah.
so it took some getting used to and some understanding of each other. But I feel like looking back, I feel like we did a good job.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any
We never
regrets.
really fought. We just also like, we're just babies. We just didn't
Totally.
know. The fighting a little bit became more when we had kids and there was just like the finances got even harder.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like the fighting didn't, or the arguing. I don't want to say fighting.
Yeah,
The arguing
arguing.
didn't start until we bought our house and we moved
And
into
then
our
we were
house
kind
in
of house
Rigby.
poor.
Yeah, we were house poor. Things
Yeah.
were really stressful. We were
Yeah.
trying to make upgrades to the house. Like we had like every dollar was accounted for in the budget. And
Yeah.
I was such a stickler to the budget. I was like hardcore Dave Ramsey fan. I was going as far as taking cash out every week and putting them in
Designated
envelopes,
envelopes.
designated
Mm-hmm.
labeled envelopes,
Mm-hmm.
where it was this cash is for groceries, this cash is for this cash is for that. And Sadie was like, no. Like
Yeah.
she kind of went along with it, but
I
she's like,
know.
what if I just want to buy a rug at TJ Maxx? What if I just want to
I don't know
whatever?
what I was thinking. I feel a lot more aware now. Like we have more money than we ever have. And I feel like way more, would you argue this? I'm way more budget aware.
Oh, for sure. But back
But
then
back
I
then,
would be at work and I would get an email or a notification of
oh,
an overdraft charge.
yes.
The amount of overdraft
I just
charges that
wanted to
we
go to
had to
TJ
pay
Maxx and
for.
buy a tea, like a coffee mug. I didn't even drink coffee back then, but like I there was a few things that went into this, I think. I think I had this like, well, first of all, remember like we didn't know about therapy. We didn't know about meditation. I had no kind of awakening or awareness.
We were just working, feeding our kids, and
Doing what we were taught to do to make us feel happy, but then also there was just like this desire in me to do what I wanted to do, including like you don't get to tell me. I think I had definitely some wounded masculine from like my childhood and my dad's and all those things, but I struggled with being told what to do, especially as like being
100%. 100%.
especially because I
Sadie,
worked. So like I was like, if you're not gonna let me get my hair dyed or go to TJ Maxx to buy a bathroom rug, I'll work so I can take care of that. And that kind of it's been a blessing because it's driven me to now, to where we are now with both of us. But I'm surprised it like didn't put more of a wedge in our I mean, we had no money.
I mean, I feel like the biggest wedge or the hardest times we had at the beginning was when both of us were working full time. So, like, once I had graduated and I was working full time and you were working, or I wasn't giving you attention, like, even when you weren't working, just in general, like, we were just two ships in the night, just
Yep.
going our own
Yep.
directions. And again, like, I wasn't very affectionate. And like looking back now, like on human design as you being like an ego projector, like you needed recognition and I was not giving you the recognition at all.
Mhm.
Like, and so if I have one regret, it's that I wish
Mm.
that I would have known like our human designs back then,
Mm.
because then I would have like known what like you needed at
Mm.
your core. Cause I was like,
Jeff's an emotional manifester. So manifestors don't really see the other. Like
yeah, we are like a good way to describe an emotional manifester is like an icebreaker ship, like one that just breaks through the ice and plows the path and doesn't care
with
about,
blinders on, like
yeah,
without other people involved.
yeah. Like I will just, a good example, another good example of a manifester in a realistic setting is say you're in a room. The manifester is the one that will just get up and leave. And then everyone else is like, why did he just leave? And I'm in my mind getting up and leaving to go, let's say, get like a glass of water and thinking, well, nobody's going to care that I get up and leave because I'm maybe like not part of the conversation or not involved. But everyone else is then like put out, like, what's with the manifester? What's with Jeff? Why is he just doing what he wants to do and not informing us, not considering our thoughts? And so that's one thing that I've had to learn, is that as a manifester, my job is to inform. And
Mhm.
so at the beginning of our relationship, I would just go do things. And a
Mhm.
lot of the things I would do without telling Sadie, because, and I did this not knowing at the time about human design, but in my mind, I would just go do things because I didn't want you being like, no, you can't do that. Or no, I actually need you to do this thing. And so I would go to the gym early in the morning thinking that, oh, if I go early in the morning, it doesn't affect Sadie because she's sleeping. But then I'm not at home in the morning to help get the kids ready, feed them breakfast or whatever, because I leave for the gym and then from the gym I'd be straight at work. So she wouldn't see me all morning long and wouldn't see me until I get home at 6 or 7 o'clock at
I
night.
feel like that was like the first 13 years of our marriage.
Oh, for sure.
We like, when you become a part of the spiritual community and they talk about the matrix, we were robots.
Oh, yeah.
We were robots. We were scared of debt. We were scared of not being able to make ends meet. We were working our asses off to do that. Every once in a while, we would, I mean, we always had a pretty good sex life, but then it was like kids, and then it was like more kids, and then it was like church callings. And then there was just, we were living in such a generator world where we were just busy. And back then, hustle culture was it like, oh, we have to do it. We have to make it. We have to make it. And also, like, you know, not just my not just my I guess quote unquote loose beliefs were being ridiculed by different family members or friends or whatever, but also the way that we lived. Like even me working as a nurse, people didn't like it.
Oh, yeah. Our families didn't like it because it's like, oh, no, the mom has to be home full time with the kids.
Yeah.
Or, oh, Jeff, you're taking care of the kids by yourself on a Saturday, or you're doing the grocery shopping. You mean Sadie doesn't do that? Like, we just lived very differently than I think a lot of our other family members.
Yeah.
But at the time, it worked. Like, I cherished the moments that I would take the kids grocery shopping and on bike rides into the park on Saturday while Sadie was at home sleeping. Like, those were good moments, and I don't take those back
The kids
because,
have such a special relationship with you now too. especially now that we both work at home. But like those moments were really the only moments, especially when we were moved to Salt Lake and you were like just really MIA with your job. They got to have such special relations with you as little babies and toddlers.
Yeah.
I'll never forget when I went back to work after 6 weeks of having Reagan, and she's our first. And Jeff didn't even, this is no fault to him, just because I just think that as a mother, of course, like I'm the one that's going to wake up and breastfeed the children. But I was like trying to train him to wake up. I had been pumping. I was like getting Reagan on a bottle, and I was trying to train him to be able to wake up in the middle of the night because he was so out of it. Like I will never forget. I'd like Reagan would cry, and like I'd look over at Jeff because I was trying to train him, like, okay, Jeff, go get Reagan. And he'd be over there like patting his chest like he had Reagan on his chest.
There was one time I went into Reagan's room, walked back into our bedroom, and was bouncing my arms. And Sadie's like, "Where's Reagan?" I'm like, "She's right here." She's like, "Jeff, you got to wake up. She's not in your arms.
Yeah.
Like, where is she?"
He was
And
such a deep sleeper. I was like, where the hell is Reagan? So it's like that's so funny because it's like almost like a perfect example of just like how we were asleep too, just like we were just doing the best we could, and that was what we knew. Like, get married young, try to make money, have as many kids as possible, do everything quote unquote right,
yeah.
and then you'll be
So,
happy.
yeah. And I would like, we had moments of happiness, but the time that we lived in Rigby, we weren't very happy. I wasn't making very much. I mean, I was making anywhere in the 50s, like 50,000 ish a year was my salary. We still had to pay for our insurance. So like my job didn't cover my insurance. Sadie worked kind of on and off at times,
Mm-hmm.
which when she worked, it really made things very hard for our relationship, really put a strain on it. And so then towards the end, it was like, we've that was when I was like, I'm not happy with my job. I need more. Like
Well, and
I need to work harder to provide for my family. And so we
yeah.
started searching for a new job. And that's what led to me finding my job in Salt Lake
Mm-hmm.
with another construction company.
Mm-hmm. And that was when I shifted from working as a nurse to blogging. And
Yes.
Jeff really struggled with that initially because,
I saw it as just like this waste of time.
mm-hmm,
Like Sadie was spending a lot of time like with Instagram and photo shoots. And it's funny now because if I would have known human design, I would be like, oh, she needs this because she loves the recognition that she gets from this as a projector. But at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, she's just so caught up in herself and just so obsessed with the likes and the comments. Like it was just so annoying to me because I didn't understand it. Like,
well, and also it was taking away from our family time. Like I can understand that. Like I was working as a nurse, and then I'd come home and like put Reagan down for a nap, or even Baylor, and I'd sit there and like try to figure out HTML codes. And I remember many times asking you, like, is there any way we can put any money towards like a new website? But you couldn't see the vision. And
well,
there's nothing bad about that.
yeah, and at the time, we both of us really didn't fully know the potential that at the time blogging had. We didn't.
I
We
knew.
You knew.
I knew.
You knew.
I did. I was like, this is going to be something.
Yeah.
But it was so stressful for you. And I completely understand that
Like we
because
had no
we had no
money,
money.
no money, and we were in a situation to where we were avoiding debt at all costs. So like a lot of people, they would just have credit card debt and they would just buy their groceries and buy their things on credit card and pay it off in time. We did not do that. We paid for everything
In cash.
in cash. Well, through our debit card.
Yeah.
We'll call that cash.
Yeah.
But we did not have like a running level of credit.
Yeah.
So,
So that was interesting because it was funny because my labor and delivery job was causing drama because
yeah.
like I also wouldn't you also say, this just came to my mind, but like I didn't have like a lot of energy to also like make the meals. So
Oh,
that
yeah.
caused serious contention because
You
Jeff
were
comes from
exhausted. Your
yeah,
batteries were depleted. So when you weren't working, we weren't really doing much.
much.
We would hang out at like some of our neighbors' houses occasionally, but there wasn't much for us that
We were just only
we were
meeting each
doing.
other as far as we could meet ourselves. Like,
Yeah. And
and we loved each
I
other.
wasn't like dating you per
No.
se. We would always just go out to dinner with friends. And so it just really created this interesting dynamic to where
And we had young kids
we were
and
both, I would say we were both struggling. I wasn't liking my job. I was feeling very frustrated with our income situation. You thankfully like always let me have a dirt bike, so that was like a good outlet for me to be able to go dirt biking with friends.
yeah,
And
his hobbies were always so important to him, which is another thing I think actually that disconnected us a little bit because
we didn't have hobbies together.
and you were always adamant like Saturdays were your bro times. And so I was like, I don't see you. But I think I did find a lot of peace in creating like my blog
Yeah.
and my Instagram. I mean
You
it
yeah, you found a lot of enjoyment and satisfaction out of that. And I could see that. Like I witnessed that. I could see like the twinkle and excitement in your eyes. So we moved to Utah.
yeah, so I quit my nursing job and I
Yeah,
do
so
full blogging, which was scary. You didn't like that because you were like, we need money. And I
yeah.
was like, I'm doing this.
So by the time we moved to Utah, you had like 5,000 followers on Instagram, which at the time I was like, wow, she's got more followers than there are people in my town. Like I was just like in awe. But we moved to Utah and you hustled. You did so many photo shoots. You did so many campaigns. Like you worked so hard and it grew fast because you hustled, you worked. And in the meantime,
Secretly, I was addicted to, I think, phentermine at the time.
yeah,
And I don't even know if you knew that. Did you know I was taking phentermine?
I don't think I knew you were, but I didn't think you were taking it as frequent as you probably were. I thought
Or
maybe,
maybe you didn't know it was like that unhealthy for me. Did you notice anything about me like getting too skinny?
um, yes and no, but it was never like a moment where I felt like you were like unhealthy skinny.
Mm-hmm.
It always frustrated me because you were like skinny and yet you just didn't notice it. You'd still be like, oh my goodness,
Yeah, my
like,
body dysmorphia was bad.
yeah, you really struggled with like your body dysmorphia, self-image, being able to just really love like who you were. And that really frustrated me because I just at times would be like, are you crazy? Like, look how gorgeous you are. You are skinny. You're like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
So we're in Utah. I at that time found we were into CrossFit before we left for Utah. So then when we got to Utah, having a gym was really important to us. We really loved that aspect of it. So I found a new gym there, got obsessed with it, went every single morning without fail, would go straight to work. And then I'd get home from work like 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And so it was still kind of the same routine as when we were in Idaho, where Sadie wouldn't see me in the morning and she would then see me at night. And then at night, it was, like I said before, we didn't really have hobbies together. We didn't really do things
Well, and if we did, we
together.
had young kids. We never
Yeah.
had anybody to watch my parents. I mean, there's a lot of kids. My parents never watched my kids. I didn't have anyone to help me.
Yeah. We didn't have family close to us in Utah to where it's like, hey, let's like trade like watching our kids or anything. Like we were in essence on an island
Yeah.
when we were there.
And when I moved to Utah, that's when my spiritual awakening happened.
Yeah.
So tell me how that was for you.
It was it was scary because there was a lot of fear that I was going to lose you. Um, and because I could see a lot of changes. I could see changes in what you were posting online. Like you were posting a lot more of you like in sports bras, which at the time was like a big deal. It's like, oh my goodness, here we are back again at the whole bikini era.
Yep.
And then you were doing yoga and meditation and you were hanging out with different people. Like everything was changing and evolving so fast, whereas me, like I was still kind of like stuck
Yeah.
in my old ways. Gym work, like it just was the same thing over and over.
Do you remember when I started meditating or like started showing, like doing that stuff like in the house? Do you ever remember seeing that?
I don't.
Yeah.
The meditation didn't scare me. It never was like a concern for me. I never like looked at it like as a weird
We just
thing.
have never talked about this. I wondered if there was like a moment where you were like, that's weird. She's
No.
turning weird.
No, it was the weird, well, the discomfort for me was I could see that you were hanging out with like different people than the people that we would hang out with when we lived in Idaho. And so I was like, oh, these people are going to be a bad influence. Sadie's going to turn into them. She's changing. And so I was just watching this, having this fear that I was going to lose you, and I didn't want to lose you. And so,
Yeah, I definitely Utah totally opened up something new, not just for the opportunities for us to learn and like the spiritual awakening, but I talked about this on Shanti's post a little bit. Just because someone just says they're spiritual doesn't mean that it's necessarily like a safe space. And I think so many spiritual people or the awakening of people want to find community so badly that they just are numb to the idea that ever because someone claims they're spiritual means they're connected to God or they have integrity or they have accountability. That's so not the case. So I definitely feel like there was a lot of trial and error when we first moved to Utah of like, oh, this is a I mean, obviously every relationship was exactly what we needed, but also it was like, man, I learned a lot of lessons.
yeah,
And my circle of influence, my friends have become much smaller, at
yep.
least the close proximity.
If there's one thing that I am obsessed with Sadie about, it's the ability she has to make friends with people. Like all of our close friend relationships, like with couples, all come from her. And she's able to connect with and make friends with people online through social media to where they're like best friends. And then they will go on trips and adventures together and do things together. And so it's one thing that's always been amazing to me to watch and witness of like just the good quality of people that you bring into our life.
Hmm.
So thank you.
Thanks, babe.
Um yeah, so as far as like the process of the awakening and like my fear and everything, it was it was all fear based. Had a lot of fear going. I touched base on this earlier, but I had a lot of fear of what other people were going to be thinking because we were definitely, especially you, we're on this path of living a different life. You were talking about things and posting things online that were very much different than, I guess, kind of what I had perceived my life or my spouse being. Like I had always pictured that we were just going to basically be this robotic family, just having the perfectly manicured home and the kids and the this, and we're going to do the things in the church and the all the stuff. And it was definitely not that way. It was,
Well, it's interesting too,
you were
because
this sacred rebel again,
yeah,
where you were like, no, like I'm going to do a photo shoot of me in a athletic wear with like a sports bra and this and that, and I'm going to be doing photo shoots for like clothing and just all these things. And it was just so different than what I had maybe perceived and even what my family had perceived of what my life was going to be. And so there was a lot of fear of that.
I think that was like the stem of most of our arguments
Yes.
because he he would say stuff like that. And I remember my argument always was like, then I'm not the one for you. Like, you're wanting somebody else. You're wanting a different woman who can give you a hot meal morning, evening, and night, or whatever, and doing this and this and this. And like, I don't know if I always knew that. I actually remember, I think I had multiple conversations where I felt like a little bit bad because I almost felt like the me that I thought that I was when we married, almost like not like lied to you, but sort of maybe did by like claiming that I was this person. And I think a lot of people get into that when they get married, where they're like, oh, well, was perceived as this person. I guess I have to keep with that person so I don't let this other person down. When the evolution is the whole point, and I was evolving, not even really that fast, but I was definitely changing
To me, you were evolving
fast.
fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that speed of that, I think,
Yeah.
is what really made me scared.
But I remember giving you not ultimatums at all, because I was never like, you're either on this boat or I'm out. I was more like, you deserve somebody who you really desire. And I don't think I'm that person anymore.
And it was at that moment where I would be like, okay, I would kind of go through this thought process. It's like, okay, you've got to, well, I would ask myself, do I love Sadie? Yes. Am I wanting to get rid of this life because I am so dead set on these beliefs to where I can't have an open mind for Sadie's beliefs. No. So let's open up our minds. Let's open up our hearts. And so I would have these moments where I would finally kind of catch up with you. And then you would have a new evolution. And then I'd catch up with you again. I use this like analogy where Sadie's like this wild Mustang where she's just off running and galloping off on this adventure, and I'm just this stubborn donkey that's being dragged along the way. But every time that she would stop and I would finally catch up, and after all the kicking and screaming, I would stop and look out at this beautiful like vista, be like,
Mm,
oh Sadie, like you led me to like a beautiful spot, like thank you.
mm,
I definitely didn't express it in that way of the
mm.
thank you. It took, I would say, a very long time, like just recently, like a few years ago. And it's the whole plant medicine aspect of our relationship that's really brought that out in me to have like a whole new eye opening perspective on life and evolution. But those first, what was it, 12 years of our marriage, 11 years of our marriage, it was me being very stubborn. Um, and it took a lot of time for me to like get caught up, and it took a lot of patience from you, as well as just kind of that stubbornness of being like, no, like this is what I believe in and this is what I'm doing, and you're coming along with me, and if you don't want to come along with me, then you're more than welcome to like go
Leave.
find someone else and leave. And you were just that confident. And so,
I wanted you to be with me always. Like
oh,
when I first
always
started my spiritual awakening, I was like so excited to share this with you. However, up at that point, we had been married for a long time, 11 years when I had my spiritual awakening. I don't remember exactly. We've been married for 15. Actually, no. My awakening was like 7 years ago.
7.
So we had been married a long enough where I was like, where I knew your personality enough to where I knew I couldn't just come to you and be like, this is exciting. Like I knew it was a little depressing for me, honestly, because I was like, homeboy doesn't want to change. He's happy where he's at, even though I can see that there's so much beauty in this evolution. And so for the first couple of years, I was like, well, maybe if I try this, maybe if I try this, maybe if I try that. And I was just getting pushback. In fact, I remember one time
I was
specifically
totally content and happy with going to the gym, going to my job, and mountain biking in the evenings or on the weekends with my buddies
on
and
repeat, on
on
repeat, on
repeat.
repeat.
Whereas
Hmm.
Sadie was like, I want to question
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
I want to go to a yoga retreat. I want to go to this meditation class. And I was like, why would you want to do those things? And so it was very foreign to
And,
me.
the answer to that was because I wasn't really happy. Like the mundane wasn't enough for me. Like,
Which is funny because even for me, I wouldn't say I was happy. I mean, there were a
yeah,
lot of moments at work that I was like, oh my gosh, like, is this really my life? And
yeah,
so then I would just look forward to the next mountain biking ride and the next high or buying a new mountain bike or whatever. Like it just wasn't very fulfilling
yeah.
and where I was like peaceful. And so I kind of want to like shift this to where I can provide my experience as a lesson for our
Amazing.
listeners. We get this question a lot from a lot of Sadie's followers where it's, how do I get my husband on board like Jeff is? And the best thing that I can give is the reminder that the women are the ones that get the inspiration through their womb. All creation comes from the womb, creation of life, creation of ideas. Like the things that you create come from your womb, and then you manifest it through your actions, through your thoughts, through your everything. And ever since the beginning of time, there's always been the queen of, let's say, the kingdom, and then there's the king who is the muscle, the one to then act upon that. But we as the kings, we are always there to protect and honor the queen and protect and honor the womb. And so just remember that most of people listening to this are going to be women, so I'm speaking to the women. You as the woman, you need to remember that the creation's coming from you, and to just be patient with your husband, because there's a lot of factors with it where they're in ways just stubborn. They're content with their routine because there's safety in that. And a lot of men, I feel like, just want that safety. They just want that content, safe
Well, if they're
feeling.
safe, then that means that they've done the job. They've
Yes,
provided.
yes. And that safety is having the castle walls up and everyone contained in the castle, and the king has kept everyone safe. I like to use
I love that
kings
because
and
the queen's
queens.
like, let me ride my horse out to the pastures.
Yes. And so um I hope this makes sense.
This is
But
beautiful. Keep going.
um so just the biggest thing that I can give and that worked for me is just continue to be that sacred rebel. Just continue to just push and trust what you know and do what you know, but also go to your spouse. And one thing that Sadie did to me years ago that really helped shift things was she came to me and said, and this was at a moment where I opened up to her and I said, I'm just afraid of X, Y, and Z. But the biggest fear I had was the fear of losing her.
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid that she was making all these changes and that I was going to lose her. So she, at this moment, and this was many conversations, but she was like, I choose you. Like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, I choose you. And those words to me were more powerful than I love you, because you can love a lot of people, but to like choose your person just really meant something very special to me. And so to know that she chose me gave me that sense of peace where I'm like, okay, she chooses me. She's not going anywhere. I'm not going to lose her. So I can just trust her, let her be.
And we still
And
say that to it every day
yeah, we still
to each
say
other.
that to this day to each other. And so it gave me a lot of peace of mind to know that, okay, I can let her be this wild, free Mustang, and I don't need to be the kicking, screaming donkey. And I can kind of let loose, open up my heart and trust and just really go with the flow and be more feminine, because the masculine is all about structure and going and doing, and the feminine is very flowy and free. And so us as the masculine and as the men, we have moments where we resist that. We resist that feminine flow. So go to your spouse just knowing that you're coming to them with this feminine energy trying to meet their masculine energy, and give them that reassurance that everything's okay, everything's fine. This is just who I am. And this is what I want to be, and maybe what I'm working towards, what I'm trying to achieve. And then invite them. And if they don't want to participate in your meditations or your yoga or your whatever, then that's okay. Um, I will say if it's very bad and very combative, then maybe it is time to then go separate ways and they aren't the right spouse for you. And that's okay. But there's there's a fine line there where don't get so impatient where you're just like, I give up. Like, this relationship is over
Yeah.
with. Because had Sadie given up on me, like,
I would have given up a long time ago.
yes,
But I had a feeling and I had a knowing. And I was going to say there's a couple things. First of all, that was beautiful.
thanks.
Second of all, by you meeting my feminine, it changed feminine within you. You're more feminine now than you've ever been because we equally have both feminine and masculine within us. So how has that been like that's my first question. Then I want to go back to like accountability both parties, but how has that been like really finding your femininity?
The hardest thing for me with my femininity,
You said it great.
thanks, is going with the flow. Is once I have a schedule and an agenda and an expectation, it's usually or was really hard for me to go with the flow and just allow change to happen. So even if that's change within your, let's say, spiritual life or your practices, like just being able to just go with that flow. And so it's really allowed me to just let go of the being so rigid of that masculine structure and just letting things kind of go with the flow.
Yeah. And what has happened when the flow has come into your life?
Beautiful things happen.
I want to ask you like that. I wanted to ask you that. And then I wanted to ask you, like, so you said that, you're 9 to 5 and all these things, like you weren't happy. What have you found now into in saying yes, in expanding, in questioning, in like loosening this grip that you had on life that you had before to where you are now?
Oh, that's a good question. I would definitely say I found a lot more happiness and satisfaction. It's definitely not every day that I'm just like, this is the best day of my life.
Totally.
Like there's definitely highs and lows, but when I was working my 9 to 5, my highs definitely weren't as high and satisfying and
Yeah.
satisfactory as they are now.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say like sometimes my lows are lower now than they were
Mm,
before. But it's I don't know, it just things just feel so much more
maybe
at
more alive,
peace. Yeah, more alive. I
like
think
more
it's a good way to
conscious,
put it.
which is why like the emotions maybe are more
Yes.
intense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so we kind of jumped to where like we were zombies, robots to like this life, which we can talk more about like what it is that we even are now. But there was a huge turning point, I think, for us, and it was around 2020 when, at least this is where how I'll explain it, and then you can explain it in your own way. But and this is really how why it worked out, and it has to do with accountability. Like I think that there was, and I'm not saying this from a victim place at all. I'm just saying it's an observant place. So tell me if I'm wrong, but there was a huge moment in our life where I really was always seen as like the rebel. I was always seen as like, Sadie's the problem. Sadie's the issue. Sadie needs to figure this out. Like, oh my gosh, it's Sadie's problem. Like, nobody was ever, okay, dare I say that I didn't feel like you were ever like the accountable piece. I never felt like, well, Jeff's the problem. Well, Jeff's just working his 9 to 5. Well, Jeff's not willing to wait, look for more income. Well, Jeff's not willing to like give up his Saturday for a second. Well, he's not willing to date me. Like, now, obviously, both extremes are not necessarily good, but I felt like there was a lot of that. And I do think that it stemmed from this idea that the man is like the keeper of the home and whatever the man wants, the man gets. And because you had like fulfilled your duty of getting a salary, it was like everything was fine. And so, unfortunately, I do think that like it kind of fell on me where I was the one that was the problem. But then something shifted when finally the division was more intense. There were a lot of things that happened. There was lawsuits, there was friendships that were cultivating and breaking and all these things. And then I finally said enough is enough. Like I'm done with this. And I actually moved here for a few months with the kids during 2020 and I just was like I want an emotional separation. And in that moment you were alone. Probably for the first time in our whole marriage because you didn't have the kids. You were like alone for months.
Yeah, this was definitely one of those times where I didn't have your safe space. Like I said, where like I felt at home with you. Like this was one of the first times in a long time that I was alone.
Yeah.
And this was one of those intense moments where you came to me and kind of, like I said before in the past, would give these ultimatums where it's like, you've got to like fix yourself and change your ways or else. And then I would have to have this like reflection point of like, okay, like I love Sadie, I don't want to lose her,
Yeah. Up
I
until
need to
then,
make some changes. But
yeah.
this moment was like huge drastic changes where it was like, okay, like this is the real deal, as in like I could legitimately realistically lose Sadie and everything and my family if I don't make some drastic changes. And that was a moment where I really had to step into my accountability of being like, I need to be a better husband, a better father. I need to relook at what my priorities were. Because at that point, like my priorities weren't you. Like we didn't have hobbies together. We didn't have moments where we were best friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were just partners in a home raising 2 kids. Not even really partners. Like we were just in essence roommates.
Yeah.
And so then it made the shift of like, okay, I want like she's my best friend and I need to treat her as such. And I need to treat her in a way to where she knows every day that I love her.
Yeah. And it didn't, I think you were just doing the best you could. Like I knew that you were doing the best you could. And the ultimatums I had given previously was more just like I wanted so badly for me to feel like I could be set free because I felt like why am I here if you can't embrace me, if you can't love me? Why am I here if we can't laugh together and like just be fun and playful and run around naked and like there was just nothing there. But I also was like so vigilant about staying because I always knew you had it within you. Like I had countless visions where I saw you as like this brighter, more exuberant being. But I was like, I can't make him get there. So what happened, the shift that happened was the accountability. Would you agree with me when you would say it wasn't there previous to that moment?
Yeah, I would always look at everything as like, oh, well, Sadie's the problem. I would never I would never look at the issues where it was necessarily like I need to be the one that changes. It was
Or
always,
evolve or shift or
yeah,
looking more into myself.
yeah. It was always Sadie's changing too much. She needs to like reel it back and calm down, or put on more clothes, all the type of things.
Totally.
And so yeah, I had a moment where I really had to go inwards, and this is one of the times where meditation and journaling first came in and made a huge impact on my life, where I was able to, for the first time, journal my thoughts. And it's interesting how powerful that is when you journal your thoughts in meditation, because you get to almost like see things from a different perspective. When you see your thoughts on paper, you can, in ways, like treat it like it's a different person, a different situation. Whereas when it's all in your head, you don't really have a moment to just, in ways, step back. And so I worked really hard there for a while to really work on my accountability, to be like, I need to step up. I need to love you more, give recognition, take care of you. But I think the biggest part was just the recognition, just you feeling like you were seen and loved and cared for.
Well, and that took slowing down. I do believe a lot of that was just like the culture of just going and going and going. And
Yeah, because
because,
I thought, oh, I'm working, I'm providing money, like we have a house, like she should just be happy. Like we
mm-hmm,
can watch TV together and
mm-hmm.
occasionally go out to dinner. Like, what more does she need?
And there would be moments when I'd ask you questions and you just like wouldn't answer. You'd be like, why do we have to go so deep? Like, why do we have to do this? Like, no, we're not doing that. We're not going there. Like, there wouldn't be answers. It was like, it felt like to me, you felt like you were being interrogated rather than like us just having moments. Like, it was consistently a fight. Like, you and I had our hands up and it was like, okay, who's right and who's not right?
Yeah.
Because we were consistently almost like whether we knew it or not, we were attacking each other's integrity, we were attacking each other's beliefs, and we just didn't even realize that's what we were doing.
Well, the biggest thing for me is I was always taught that all of my problems can be solved by going to church, praying, and reading your scriptures. And you were like, no, there's more. And I just always want to be like, no, Sadie, like, how can you question it? Like, no, you're doing it wrong. Like, I am the one that's doing it right, even though I wasn't fully fulfilled or fully
Or
happy.
happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I mean, I was terrified initially too, but I always knew there was light outside of what we were told. Like, I always knew there was more, at least for me. Right. And one thing that I'm grateful for our journey is it was never about pressuring you. At least, I don't know. Excuse me if I'm wrong, and you can say if I was, but once I was realizing like this is my own journey, it was never about pressuring you. It was more just like giving me the relief to be able to just be who I was. And I don't really feel like I had that, like, because you were so scared. And there were definitely moments of control where you're like, no, Sadie, you have to do this or this. So it was beautiful when I finally was like, I'm done. And you were like, okay, wait, this isn't worth it. And then and then it was like 6 months later when we actually when I finally said no, really, like I don't think this is going to work out, then we like really chose each other for about 6 months, and then that's when I was like, okay, we need to, like, this is still not working out. I will say this is really interesting because we were emotionally separated. I think it was only like 6 weeks or something because then you came for Christmas. And I have a note in my phone. I wonder what it would look like now. I would like have to go back and look at it, but I remember writing down all the things I noticed about you that were different. And it had actually little to do
Different
with
when I showed up for Christmas. This was
different
after I was home by
when you went through
myself.
your own.
Yeah.
And didn't you like read a bunch of books and like
Yeah.
journal and just like
Journal, meditate, and read books.
that's when he wrote me the letter about the wild Mustang and the donkey. And he was like, it was like the introspection of like, whoa.
Yeah.
Um,
But I remember coming here for Christmas, and I, leading up to it, I was like, I feel like I have this clutter in my mind and my body that was holding me back from being able to truly see what was most important to me in my life. And so I don't know, basically, lack of a better word, had a purification process to where then when I showed up, immediately Sadie saw that like my eyes were clear or more blue. And I paid more attention to the kids. I got down at
yep.
their level
Yep.
because before the kids were just the kids. Like they were better seen, not heard. I think that's the saying where it's like, it would just be almost annoying to me having to get down and be with the kids and interact with them.
Yeah. I mean, it
Or
was,
they'd be like, Dad. And I would be checked out thinking about something else, thinking about, I don't know, the next mountain bike ride I was going to go on or what was going on with work. And I wasn't present. I wasn't fully present with Sadie or the kids. And so when I showed back up, I was like, I'm going to be fully present. And I was. And it was amazing just how transformative it felt within me and within them.
it changed everything. Like I get emotional thinking it back because that's changed everything. And you're still that dad. One thing that I've always loved about Jeff, and I think maybe I don't know if it clouded it or if it just gave me hope, but like I didn't know in a way, and I'm not saying this in a negative way to my fathers, but like I don't know what it's like to be still married to your father that birthed you, right? I don't know what it's like to be raised in a home where the father that birthed you is still in the home. And because of that, there is a disconnect. There is a difference. Like I don't actually know anything to like base off your relationship with the kids off of. So the kind of dad that you were, I was just grateful for. There was no abuse there and I was grateful for that. However, there was definitely a disconnect. And it's not just like super present and abusive. There's like a space in between there. And I didn't even see it. I didn't see it because I think we were both in such survival mode, but of course it would continue to like bleed into the relationships of your children. Of course, just the energy in your home. So I'll never forget when I picked you up from the airport and you just wouldn't stop staring at me and your eyes were just so blue and it just felt like you were alive. Like it felt like you were there fully in your body, maybe for the first time in your life. And I was like, there's hope. And then we drove home and you got out of the car and ran to the kids and bent down and got on your knees and hugged them and wrestled them and you were laughing with them. And it was like, oh my gosh, there's hope. And I just cried myself to sleep, I think, every night that week because I was so grateful.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me was I had gone through this process when I was home alone during that time where I'm like basically kind of picturing my life without you and without the kids. And then when I showed back up here, it was like, you need to cherish this because this is like the most special thing that you have. And so it's time to like stop focusing on the other things, the other stuff, the other distractions, whether that was hobbies or work or whatever, but really focus on what was most important.
Yeah,
And it was so special.
it was so
I'll
special.
never forget that. And then, so we finished out that trip. We went home, back home to Utah. Things were great, really special. And then we came back here again a few months later for our spring break. And that was the time that Sadie had gotten some rings and re-proposed to me.
Yeah, I like surprised him with a photo. Well, it was a family photo shoot, but I had everything planned. I had like on a cake. Our dear friends Natalie and Micah and Zor were here, and
This was during COVID. So
yeah,
we had friends that were living here during COVID. So things were like in the lockdown mode. And
I was like, dudes, will you like help me do this renewal?
so we did this family photo shoot. And during the photo shoot, Sadie knelt down and proposed to me. And I still have the ring. It's this one right here.
Yeah, my ring's over there on the counter, but it's my wedding
But
ring.
yeah, we have more or
I
less.
bought the rings here.
Yeah, she bought them here. They're basically like kind of like a matching set, basically, like from the same artist. And so our friends were there and they officiated our vow renewal ceremony. And it was so special to be able to have the kids there because the kids were just like
So
bawling,
emotional, so sweet.
just they knew, they could
Yeah.
tell that this was special and different. And
And I think they could tell as much as we tried to hide it, like there was disconnect. And honestly, Jeff, like it was never even about you believing the same thing that I believed. It was only about just like us being able to really see each other.
oh yeah,
And that was so blinded and foggy.
cherishing each other,
Yeah. We
valuing each
couldn't even
other,
see each other.
recognizing each other.
Yeah.
And so we did that and we got back home and it wasn't rainbows and butterflies from that point on. It definitely had its challenges, but it felt different. It was just
It's
different.
definitely been different.
There was definitely everything was much more intentional.
Yeah.
Like as far as I was a lot more intentional with recognizing you, recognizing the kids. And it was about that. It was around that time that we had found plant medicine. And so we were learning more about ourselves and having this awakening and
Yep.
these just big shifts, big changes.
Well, when I when it first came out where I was like, I'm done, I can't do this, like there was so much going on. This was before the separation happened. That's when grandmother called to me. I was like in a very, very, very dark place.
Yeah. You were in a moment where you're like, I don't know what to do with my life.
I
Like,
don't know if I
I'm
can be
sick of this
here.
marriage.
It was
Like,
bad, yeah.
yeah.
And
Both of us
um
were kind of in that space.
yeah.
And so we both had sat separately,
Well,
but around the same time together.
and what's crazy is you were like so for it. Like I was like, I'm gonna go sit, and you were like, oh my gosh, well, let me know how it goes because maybe I'll sit.
Yeah.
And this was with grandmother ayahuasca, and we just both cultivated a really powerful relationship, and it
Yeah.
like really changed and healed so much.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Um,
really special.
do you want to talk a little bit about your first ceremony, or do you have anything to like say that like did any part of your ceremonies help you kind of like anchor into your accountability piece?
Yeah. Because the first one took place before that Christmas, and it really helped start the process of self love. Just
Yeah.
like I really struggled with my self love of myself. And that was also the start of the process of removing my attachments associated with my family, trying to feel like I always needed to appease this outside image and this view. And it really started that process of being like, I can love myself for who I am, and I don't need to live my life for someone else. Like, this is my life. This is me, and I can let that go. And so that really was like
Do you
the
feel like up
huge
until that point you
shift.
were living it for everybody else?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I just wanted to just keep everyone happy, keep everyone at bay. I didn't want to have any more of those awkward conversations telling me that I needed to tell Sadie to take pictures down. Like it was the
Yeah.
beginning process.
And we still had that. We had some moments
Yeah, we had moments where the
through our
family would
marriage.
call where it's like, you got to talk to Sadie. She can't be posting these pictures of her in sports bras. And I would go along with it. And then finally there was a moment where I was like, no, like enough. This is our life. Leave us alone. And so there were definitely moments throughout that time where there were shifts and changes, but
Yeah. So
Yeah.
medicine, self-love,
Yeah.
self-confidence.
And then my
So
accountability.
people looking at you though, like you're a very gorgeous man. So, but you struggle with self-confidence.
Yeah.
So tell me where that comes from. Do you know?
Um, I think just as a kid, just being chubby, and you see the other kids that aren't chubby. I don't know, just maybe never being told that, like, oh, you're
Mm,
handsome, you're beautiful,
mm-hmm,
like you're just perfect the way that you are.
mm-hmm.
Like I never really had like a moment where, as a child, where I felt like confident or someone told me to feel confident.
Yeah.
It was just my own self judgments.
Do you also feel like it's because you were maybe told that like everything was outside of you?
Yeah.
Like your healing, your happiness, your everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Your happiness was stemmed on if you were reading your scriptures and going to church and praying. That was what your happiness was
But
stemmed
then
on,
that
or
wasn't bringing
following
you
the
happiness.
commandments. Yeah. That wasn't. And so, but then on top of that, I just wasn't happy with how I looked and how I felt. And so it caused a lot of disconnects within my mind and a
Yeah.
lot of distractions. So,
Yeah, you know, this idea of accountability has been really interesting because really, like I said, in 2020, that's what brought us together. That's what really saved our marriages because both of us were willing to say, okay, where is my piece in this? And then I also think in order to have that accountability, there's been something it wasn't like we had accountability and all of a sudden we like agree on the same things now forever because it's never going to be that way. After that, there was a place where you were like, okay, Sadie, I trust that you are choosing me. I trust that there's accountability here. Let's like understand where that is. Let's understand what our beliefs are. And then like, let's just honor each other in those.
yeah.
And of course, now we have more beliefs that we agree with together, but also there's still some that like we believe different things and that's okay.
Yeah. Totally.
But I think the big piece in accountability is having like, I always call it the 4 T's is the truth, like your truth. And how do you even know how can you even be accountable for something if you don't even know what you believe? And
Yeah.
so that's been interesting is watching you and me be like, well, do we even believe what we were told?
Yeah.
And if we don't, then what do we believe?
Yeah.
Jeff's been on this like really powerful journey of understanding that himself, and it's been so powerful to watch because in a lot of ways it's been even deeper than mine. And then the trust in yourself, like have so, and trust comes with integrity, like, and the integrity is built in your solar plexus, which is the chakra that's all about your um, identity. And that can come through understanding your truths. Like it's really anchoring and moving through your lower chakras where you're like, okay, these are my roots. Do I actually believe in that root? Am I going to pull it out or am I going to actually believe and instill and plant a different root in my tree? Right. And then it's transparency. Transparency, like, okay, so what if we believe different things? That's great. But also we have committed to a union between each other. And that doesn't mean that I get to just like F around and be whoever I want to be. Like that's rude and disrespectful. Although I do believe that there have been moments in the past in our marriage where I did it out of bitterness. I'm not perfect. I really like I had to learn from a lot of my choices when initially, and thank goodness we've been able to come back together so beautifully. But now as I'm realizing and I've gotten older and I've less to prove and I feel more whole in myself and my beliefs, you and I both like we are going to believe differently, but we're also going to have transparency that becomes clear and also be mindful of our relationship together. And then the other is totality, which is the masculine and feminine within us, really anchoring that in. And I see that so clearly. Like our marriage, yes, has happened ups and downs, but the last 4 years of our marriage have been the best years of my life.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
totally agree. I think those 4 T's can definitely apply to like what I was talking about earlier as far as how do I get my spouse on board? Like if you can follow along with those 4 T's, like a lot of amazing stuff can happen. And I remember
And it has
once,
to be both parties.
yes, and I remember once you kind of brought the 4 T's into our relationship when it was around that time that we renewed our vows. That was when we really came together very strong.
Because you
And
had every right to be scared. I didn't feel safe to share stuff with you.
yeah,
So I was hiding.
you were very quiet And yeah, you were hiding
And so,
things.
of course, that's what you were feeling.
Yeah, it made me fear and
Yeah.
scared and all sorts of stuff. But I'm really grateful, like going back to like this whole journey, because we're next week going to be celebrating 15
15
years.
years.
15 years.
Well,
It's
it's
nuts.
this week. So today we're recording, it's Monday and
Oh
it's
yeah, it is
Wednesday.
this week.
So Wednesday's our anniversary,
So by
and
the time
this.
everyone listens to
Mhm.
this, we will have celebrated 15 years together.
Mhm.
So I love you.
I love you, baby.
But I look back to all of our experiences and I wouldn't change any of it.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
I I don't think if this would have been year one of our marriage where we are now, I don't think that that's possible. I think
Mm-mm.
that's what marriage is about, is like growing together, changing together, growing separately, changing separately. Like that's just kind of how it is. That's just the evolution of things. And so I just have so much gratitude for the ups and downs, for the highs and the lows, for all the moments that we've had throughout our relationship. And so for those listening, like don't lose hope and just work on your relationship, work on yourself, work on your relationship with your spouse, and don't give up on the other person. There's always hope.
There's
There,
always hope.
there really is.
Yeah.
But going back to the four T's, if you, I would say, can't have the four T's in your relationship, then that may be a sign that your relationship just isn't going to work out. Now, I don't want anyone to go base a divorce decision off the four T's. Definitely do like marriage counseling, try things like that.
Yeah, I
we
mean,
went we went through marriage counseling, and leading up to that I was like, I'm not doing marriage counseling. Like, I'm not the problem, you're the problem, you being Sadie. And so that
he actually
was,
did say that
I did,
in the REI parking lot. I'll never forget it.
because I grew up in a family where my parents didn't do counseling.
Yeah.
But like looking back, I remember that they weren't totally like on board with each other with everything.
Yeah.
And so I was just like replicating what I
What
grew
you
up
knew.
with. Yeah. And what I knew.
Yeah.
But yet what I knew and what I saw was completely different than what my marriage was evolving into. And so I think that's where kind of that fear came into play, where my marriage was not a mirrored copy of my parents' marriage. It was definitely very different, and I didn't know how to like handle that. But we're here together now, and it's beautiful, and I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a beautiful evolution. And, when we renewed our vows, um, I didn't prepare vows because like I knew it was happening, but I was like, that would be rude. Like, let's just go in with no knowing. And all I remember saying, I don't even remember what I said completely in my vows, but I do remember looking at you in the eyes and just being like, I always wanted it to be you. I always knew it was you. Like, I always knew you were mine. Like, and you and I was yours, and we were supposed to be together. I just I wanted you to know too that one, you deserved more of a fulfilling life for you. And I also wanted you to know that it was like me too, that we could have a dream life, that it didn't have to be cookie cutter. It didn't have to be whatever the other people were doing. And not like it's wrong or bad. It's just that I knew our life was meant to be more. And the other thing I want to say really quick is like, your attention is going to go where your intention is. And one thing that I think is really interesting that we kind of navigated is the attention was elsewhere, meaning like whether it was through friendships or businesses, or that I think is the number one thing that ruins relationships more is disassociating from the problem and putting your attention elsewhere. Because I promise you, if your attention is elsewhere, I promise you, you're going to fixate on that and that's going to be your solution. When we decided to give it our all and try again, full transparency, totality, trust, truth, and accountability, it changed everything. And we have to continue to do that. So, like, as we continue to expand, and think about this game that we're playing in this world that we're playing. Like, we literally can live whatever life we want. All that matters is that you and I, if we continue to choose each other, that we do so incomplete with those four T's. So, babe, I love you.
I love you too.
Happy 15 years.
Happy 15 years.
Anything else to add?
Just, I love you. I'm grateful for the next 15 years.
Oh,
Look
and
forward to
beyond.
it and beyond.
I love you so much. And this is just a beginning. We'll continue to weave our story more and more into the podcast and share more. And
You'll see me some more a
yeah,
few times.
next week we're going to talk about, we talk about plant medicine and how it was a huge pivotal part of our marriage. Now we host retreats with it. And Jeff's very much integral piece of Simply Sadie Jane, Simply Wild Retreats. Like, I mean, that should be a whole nother conversation and podcast about
Me quitting my job,
mm-hmm,
the lessons I've learned from that. Maybe
mm-hmm,
we can do that in the next episode.
working together.
Yeah.
And then also like a whole episode about us working together through Medicina and applications opening for that and
Love it.
Sacred Rebels and
Let's
all the
do it.
things. So thank you for choosing you. Because I do believe this whole thing, like I know that we talked about with marriage, like, oh, I want to choose into this experience. I choose Sadie. Oh, I'm going to work on this. But ultimately, beside any of that, you had to work on yourself to find who you were
100%.
to then like continue to show up in this relationship.
100%.
And I have to do the same. Like that's where the accountability piece comes in is us.
In order to work on your relationship, you got to work on yourself first.
Yeah. Because you can only see your spouse as far as you've seen yourself.
Yeah.
So thanks for doing that. I
love you.
can't imagine my life without you.
You know.
I love you, babe, so much.
I love you too.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, gorgeous.
If you have any questions for us, drop them in the comments or like maybe DM them for us. We'll continue to do more conversations. And I just am so grateful that we have come to this point of our lives.
Absolutely.
And just continue to choose each other.
I love you.
And I'm so grateful that you were able to find the wild within you. And I ask you guys every single time at the end of the podcast to find the wild within you. What can you do today to help you harness the wild within you? Do it unapologetically with so much accountability. I love you so much. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Goodbye.